Alright, so let's look and see what's going on. We should have... No, not here. If you're out there, I'm just trying to figure out where I am. So don't worry, we're going to start in just a second here.
Sean's not on yet, right?
Sean, I don't think is on yet.
Have you heard anything from Ecclesia lately?
I have not.
If they had a something going with, because they're around San Antonio.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe the Mosleys might go for San Antonio as a place to come.
Yeah, no, I know. No, I have not. Okay, I will let Sean know. I don't think it's going to come up automatically in live. It might. Doesn't it? Well, yeah.
It's a commitment anyway for him. It's 2.5 hours. So we're now at whatever it is.
It's a commitment. No, that's fine. But he also doesn't have anything else.
Oh, I see. That's just kind of his service.
Yeah.
How come I'm frozen?
You're not?
I'm not. It looks like I'm not. Okay, here we go. Now it's back live. I was frozen for a moment.
No, you weren't frozen. You were delayed.
Oh, I see. Delayed.
We're delayed. Sean will be delayed too when he gets on. I'll give him a moment to get on, perhaps. Okay, yeah. So we'll see. What am I doing? 25, 1 through 16. So far, there's nobody on here, which is fine. All right. I'm not sure when he's going to come on, so we can go ahead and get started. Okay.
If I get anything.
My shirt is causing a little bit of trouble, so let me see if I can fix that. Or if it's just a matter of... I don't think there's a glue in the shirt. No? So that's weird. Let's... Ugh. Alright. Nope. Too much. Oh, I see. Now it's getting pixely. Because this is not well lit, so it's so dark. So to get rid of it, I have to get it darker. All right.
So we have a contrast. I'm the gray, and you're all colorful.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, Sean is here. Whoa, we got all psychedelic there.
I'm the stern John the Baptist figure, and you're the affable figure.
I mean, I thought that was the opposite.
The two witnesses. Pardon?
I thought I was the obnoxious one, and you were the nice one.
With the beard. Well, you have the beard. So
I have the beard. What does that mean?
You're more biblically. You look more biblical.
Whoa. Okay, Sean. My dad just said I look more biblical. Is it my more biblical? I'm just picturing somebody like walking around like a big book around them. All right, you ready? Okay. What's up with all these instructions about the tabernacle? We're going to talk about that and lots of other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan. We're going through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy, over the course of this year. We're reading a little bit. Was something wrong? You looked at me.
No, just wanted to change the pace.
Okay, I was like, it is Genesis to Deuteronomy, right?
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit early in the morning. Genesis to Deuteronomy, and we read a little bit every day, 5 books. And I'm going to be reading from the Robert Alter translation. We are reading today Exodus 25, 1 through 16. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelites that they take me a donation from every man, as his heart may urge him, you shall take my donation. And this is the donation that you shall take from them: gold and silver and bronze and indigo and purple and crimson and linen and goat hair and redded ram skins and ochre dyed skins and acacia wood. Oil for the lamp, spices for the anointing oil and for the aromatic incense, carnelian stones and stones for setting in the ephod and in the breastplate. And they shall make me a tabernacle that I may abide in their midst. As all that I show you, the form of the tabernacle and the form of all its furnishings. Sorry, keep going. Where am I? Thus shall you make it. And they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits its length, and a cubit and a half its width, and a cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and outside you shall overlay it, and you shall make upon it a golden molding all around. And you shall cast for it 4 golden rings, and set them on its 4 feet, and 2 rings on its one side, and 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, and you shall bring the poles through the rings on the side of the ark to carry the ark with them. And the rings of the ark the poles must be, they shall not come out. And you shall set in the ark the tablets of the covenant that I shall give you. All right, so we get started on this week. We're going to be talking a lot about the tabernacle, a specific structure, a specific building, lots of actual elements to it, right? And one of the questions that people might get to, and there's a little shout out to my wife because she kind of talks about this sometimes, about what's going on. Like, why does it go into such great detail over and over again about this space? To a modern audience, this is something that I do also as a living. You would not go through a narrative and get this level of detail. This is not considered well written, from a narrative perspective in terms of engaging the audience to go on this granular of a level. It's considered poor form because it's like, why is all of this relevant, right? And that's usually why an artist would edit it out, because it's not relevant. But obviously it is relevant, right? That's why it's here. So the question is why is it relevant for us to have this level of detail, especially when there are other structures, there's other places, there's locations we do not get this level of detail. What do you think?
Well, this is a sanctuary. Where else are you going to find out about it? This is has a very specific purpose. It's a holy purpose. It's interesting.
I mean, fair enough, but we don't get a physical description of, let's say, the Jesus Christ on this level. We don't know how tall he was. We don't know a lot of things about him.
Well, that's not that is a separate matter from a structure that you're going to be using year after year after year for spiritual purposes. You need to know, and then also, well, there's a lot to this.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to.
I mean,
I was going to get into it later on, but
well, no.
forced my hand.
We don't have to talk about it in full. You can kind of give an overview because we're going to be talking about it over the course of this week. But just kind of a high level, if you want to start us off.
These are symbolic of a heavenly reality, as I'll show you later in the book of Hebrews.
Okay.
So there's tremendous symbolism in here,
right?
And we don't understand it all,
right?
But over the years, let me say something perhaps radical. That in the millennium,
I always say stuff radical.
So. In the millennium, there will be a functioning temple and temple worship. That does not mean that people will be obligated to bring sacrifices, but there will be sacrificial activity going on by the priests in the temple.
That is pretty radical on multiple
Uh,
levels.
and take a look at Ezekiel 40
Mhm.
through 47 there. And
So what about people that take that as a metaphor? What do you think? Why would you say it's not?
you wouldn't read it that way. An objective person wouldn't read it that way. You'd have to want it to be a metaphor. If when you read it, it's rather obvious what's going on there. To make that a metaphor, I would say is a leap.
Okay,
Yeah,
because there's lots of people that do. It's
well,
actually,
because they don't like it.
it's probably the most predominant, well, maybe the most
No,
predominant
The
view right
Jews
now.
don't consider it a metaphor.
Okay.
Um, but anyway.
Oh, hi, Andrew. Welcome.
Oh, okay. Um, I was going to mention Tony. Let's go back let's give some background here.
Yeah.
Um, when I was a boy, I had the opportunity to hear from a rabbi in New York, Emanuel Jacobowitz. Later on, he became chief rabbi of Ireland and then chief rabbi of the UK. He became a very influential figure in the Commonwealth, I believe, and became an advisor to Margaret Thatcher. His successor, Jonathan Sachs, who died not that long ago, was also very influential and dealt with prime ministers, one of which was Tony Blair. And Tony Blair, I think, raised the question with him. The whole world is created in 6 days, one chapter, and we've got all this detail on the tabernacle, one building. Well, there's various factors there. We don't need to have in the Bible all the details about nature, physical details about nature. We have to have a basic idea of God as creator, but science is there to discover.
Right. We can observe it, right? We can make our own observations on systems that exist. Yeah.
But God wants to regulate worship of Him. It has to be carefully done.
Right.
And here's another thing: they're in the wilderness, and this gives them, frankly, something to do, a focus of attention, a project to work on, which takes time and effort. And here they are in the wilderness, so in effect, it's a positive activity for them all. Look, you could just look at it that way.
Yeah,
something to occupy them in a sense.
Yeah, we'll get into that in terms of regulation of worship. One thing I want to bring up, you talked about creation, so I'm going to just jump on that point. When it talks about the things that are going to be used, there are 7 categories of materials. At least this is something that Dennis Prager brought up that I thought was interesting. Metals, dyed yarns, fabrics, timber, oil, spices, gems. So that's cool, right? That's a nice little parallel.
Yeah, there's symbolism. Like I see, well, if you look at the numbers here, they come out as symbolic if you know the Bible. But I was going to ask Robert Alter. I wanted to see how he translated. Am I? Oh no, I'm in the wrong chapter.
Verse 5.
No, I wanted. Yes, verse 5.
I knew it. He takes it as a color, ochre dyed skin. He says many translations interpret the Hebrew techashim. Is that right?
Yeah, tachash or techashim in the plural.
Yeah, as dolphins or dugongs, but a more plausible connection has been made with an Akkadian terms that indicates a yellow or orange dye, and that would be keeping with the focus on the brilliantly dyed stuff in the previous verse. So that is where he gets that.
Well, hooray for Robert Alter. He may have solved a problem for us because, people wonder what critter.
Yeah, I know often it's like badger.
Yeah, well, badger is not the most popular translation. New King James has it, but in a lot of translations it's a porpoise or dugong or manatee or some kind of animal.
Which would be strange because how would they have access to that in the wilderness?
No, they would get it out of the Red Sea. The idea is they would get it out of the Red Sea.
But they don't live in the Red Sea.
No, but they're close to it where they are in the wilderness.
No. But do dolphins or manatees live in the Red Sea?
Yeah, animals like that live in the Red Sea.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
I was not aware of that.
Oh, yeah. In fact, if you go to Eilat today, there's a whole area where people interact with the dolphins.
Oh.
Yeah.
Israel just got way more awesome. Okay. I like dolphins. Of course, I live in Florida, so we have dolphins too.
Daniel would love Eilat.
I would.
In fact, I would.
I would love Israel, to be honest.
I spent 2 summers there and never got to Eilat. Isn't that terrible?
That is terrible. It's not even that big of a country. What were you thinking?
Well, I wasn't.
Fail.
I wasn't in total control of my time.
That's what they always say. Okay. One thing about all these instructions is it starts out and it says, take a donation as his heart may urge him, blah, blah, blah. And then it tells them what to bring and stuff like that, right? One reason I think we have all these specific instructions is accountability. I think as religious institutions, you do have accountability in terms of what you are doing with your materials. You know, you can certainly ask, and we should, and I believe in principles such as tithing or free will offerings or not muzzling the ox or all of that stuff, right? The worship requires resources, right? The church to function requires resources. However, I think you can look at this and understand the level of transparency that God is giving for his worship, mechanically speaking, right? So I do think that you can follow that principle and feel like, yes, you owe it to your audience to give them a lot of transparency about how you're using your resources. What do you think? Too far or makes
No,
sense?
that's not too far.
Okay.
And I would like to mention, I was checking on the Hebrew. This portion is called Truma, and they translate this offering as Truma. And I think in some places it's called a Heave Offering because Truma, the idea is of lifting up.
Hmm.
So in a sense, you're lifting up this offering.
Yeah,
You're getting
altar says means to elevate. Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
this is something you're raising to the status of an offering to God. It's a beautiful concept. Wanted to bring that out.
Hmm.
And I'll have more to say as we go along. There was one thing I wanted to comment on from the past, if you don't mind.
Yeah, one thing that
But
Robert
go
Alter
ahead.
points out from a narrative perspective, because I was kind of harping on the Bible for making a narrative peculiarity, because it would be in a modern context, right? That's all I was getting at. I'm obviously not criticizing the artistry of the Bible. But one thing that this brings, I know my dad's chicken.
I'm,
No,
I'm just joking around.
yeah. But ultimately, one reason why all these detailed instructions are is what's going to happen next, right? What happens next in the narrative is a perversion of worship, right? So you start out with all these regulations about worship and the care you need to take, all of that, and immediately what you see next, narratively speaking, is people just borrowing customs from anywhere and going completely off the rails. So I think that's a narrative reason for this being where it is, because it kind of just interrupts the action, right? But I think that's a narrative reason, and that's something that Robert Alter pointed out as well. So I'll give him credit for that. That's a good observation.
I'd like to mention that the other day I talked about 120 as symbolic of the organizing the church, and I wanted to mention that goes all the way to the end of the Bible. It comes at 144,000. That's 120 times 120 times 10. So that pattern holds all the way through.
Hmm.
It says in verse 8, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them.
Hmm.
And so we have the term Mishkan. What is well, how does Robert Alter translate Mishkan?
uh what and they shall make me a tabernacle that I may abide in their midst.
Okay, so he calls it tabernacle. It's a place of it's a dwelling place in effect.
He says it literally means abode. It is, of
Ah,
course,
good.
a portable sanctuary to be carried from encampment to encampment in the wilderness, and provisions are made for carrying the ark, beginning in verse 12.
Now I wanted to mention that God says, dwell in booths during the autumn,
Hmm.
for 7 days, and
Right.
remember the Exodus experience. But there's another level of that. Israel was dwelling in temporary dwellings, but God was dwelling among them in various ways. The pillar of fire by night, the cloud by day, and now the sanctuary. In other words, God was also dwelling with them, and that comes to a climax in John 1, where God becomes enfleshed and dwells among
Yep.
us. So the Festival of Tabernacles ties in with this account. Just
Right.
want to mention that.
Yeah, it ties into the constant physical ways that God
Right. God wants
interacts
to
with
dwell
us.
among us. And
Right.
when we come to the end of the story, the tabernacle of God is with men,
Right.
in New Jerusalem, Revelation
Yeah.
21.
Yeah.
So that's a theme throughout the Bible.
He's not just this ethereal,
Right.
from a distance. That's
Right.
not. I mean, I'm not just ragging on that song exactly, but I don't like that framework because it's not really the framework of the Bible when you put it quite that way. It sounds distancing, and that's not the point.
Now, also, well, did we get to the ninth verse? Yes.
We did.
So God actually, how it all worked, but
Hmm.
but Moses got instructions on Mount Sinai regarding
Yeah.
all of this, and so evidently, I suppose unless he had a very brilliant mind, he may have somehow recorded instructions while he was there.
You mean whether or not he could just remember it?
Yeah, or whether had some way of recording the instructions when he came back.
Oh, I
So,
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Now,
anyway,
now, when it comes to the whole, I show you the form, you shall make it, and so you can dwell, and things like this. Um, there's a certain amount of give and take that I think is important in the sense of that too. And I know that would trigger some people that are um, maybe whatever predeterminist or something like that. But I think there is something to be said of we have to be willing to accept Christ in order for him to come. And we don't necessarily have to make a place like in advance because I think we need the divine revelation to even make that process. But you know what I mean? There's a give and take here in the tabernacle. There's them following instructions and then God rewarding them with his presence, and there's a give and take that I think should not be lost, if that makes sense. I may not be saying it delicately enough. Maybe you can riff on it a little bit better, but you know what I
no,
mean?
I'm just fine.
I think that parallel is there. And people say that it's like, let Jesus into your heart kind of thing. And to some degree I think that's true. You have to not quench the spirit and stuff like that. You have to there's effort and then there's a reward, it's this it's a relationship kind of situation.
There's an interesting paradox here. It's a mobile apparatus, or it's
Hmm.
a mobile structure. It's designed to be carried around,
Right.
but yet it's a very high quality structure. So
Hmm.
God dwelt in a quality structure, but at the same time, it was not not some huge cathedral. It remained a mobile structure even later.
Right.
Finally, David said, he wanted to build a permanent structure,
Right.
and God told him, "Well, I never asked you to, but it was, wonderful of you to want to do it, but
Hmm.
Solomon will do it." But I have a feeling that, in effect, God left it up to them to decide to make it a more permanent structure. And once they did, endorsed it. And in fact, as I said, even in the millennium, it's going to be there.
Hmm.
And when they didn't rebuild it, when they came back from that captivity, he exhorted them to rebuild it. So even though he didn't start with a permanent structure, it seemed that once they decided they wanted to give him a permanent structure, he endorsed that concept, and then it became something that he wanted them to do. So I
So you
get
don't
the
necessarily think that he inspired David to come up with that?
well. That's what I'm saying, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think that uh,
Like
he
it's like a
he
progressive
allowed
revelation
them.
sort
I
of thing.
think he allowed them the option of finally coming up. Hey, yeah, we ought to do something more permanent. I think he kind of gave them that leeway to
I
come
see.
to come
To
up with it.
mature to that
Yeah,
level.
yeah, I
Okay,
think so. Just
I
yeah,
gotcha.
hope that's not too radical
Well,
again.
it's kind of a progressive revelation concept. I mean, you do
Yeah,
have to
right.
somewhat believe in that
Yes, yeah,
because
right,
otherwise, what's the purpose of later writings in the Bible, right? If there's
right,
no new information, if there's no new maturity and new understanding, then
right.
all it's doing is just repeating itself.
Grow in grace and the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
why, of course, we're the most righteous generation that lived. I'm kidding. But some people kind of take it that way, so don't go that direction.
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I could defend this with scripture
Uh-oh.
that the church is compared to the moon, Jesus Christ is compared to the sun. We reflect the
Hmm.
light of the sun
Right.
as the moon, and the moon has phases, and so, and it waxes and it wanes, and the church has its ups and downs
Right.
historically.
And don't be sure that you're in the full moon cycle
Yeah,
when you're in
right.
the new moon
There you
cycle
go.
because
Right.
you don't necessarily know. And
Right.
you might be in a full moon cycle and the rest of the people are in the new moon or vice
And may
versa.
also vary from community to community.
Correct. Yeah.
As we see in Revelation 2 and 3, one group had some strengths and weaknesses, another group had other strengths and weaknesses
Right.
as you went that mail route from Ephesus to Laodicea.
All right, so that being said, we're going to dive into this because there's a lot more to unpack in terms of the whys and the wherefores and the what's going on, but we have given you a reason why it's even here in the first place. Yes,
Let me make another comment.
of course.
I must admit to my limitations. When you describe something in words, it's hard for me to really make a mental picture of what the building ought to look like.
Mhm.
So
Some people can't do it at all, by the way.
so I would say
So if you're one of those people, don't feel bad. It is a thing.
so I would say it's like Tabernacle for Dummies. If you ever seen those books. So I would say
No, it's true. Like if they said a tabernacle, it's like, well, what is that? We really
Yes.
can visualize, because people can make replicas of it. There was one just, that used to be open right near where we lived, and it was a replica.
So I rely on experts who and there are you can research online or even go to
Mhm.
certain places
Yeah,
where models exist
yeah,
and you can kind of check the credentials of the ones who have prepared them.
yeah,
And so I would recommend that you look at these models and illustrations,
yeah.
to get a picture of what it was like. As I said, it's hard. Many of you may be like me, have a hard time just reading about it and really getting the idea. So, let's break down and look at what people have done.
No, it's a great idea.
Uh,
But it allows you to do that, right? All these details allow you to make a, very clear model of what it looks like,
I'd
which is really
also
cool.
like to mention, just also there is in the old city of Jerusalem the Temple Institute,
Hmm.
where they have really worked very hard and done painstaking research to try to duplicate whatever you read here.
Hmm.
And so now I'm not saying politically that I'm endorsing the institute, but I'm saying that they have done a lot of research on vestments, garments, utensils, and that sort of thing.
Right.
Because what they want to do is
Take it back.
they want to be ready
Yeah.
when when there is a temple to get right into action.
Yeah.
So they're there.
Doing it, breeding red heifers and all of that
They're
fun
there. And by
stuff.
the way, one other thing that I hope I'm not just waxing eloquent here,
You
but
are, but it's okay.
ranting. But I just want to say, don't get hysterical about reports of rumors
What?
of a rebuilt temple or that sort of thing. This has been going on for since the
Centuries.
Yeah, right, literally.
Millennial.
Look, I've done research on this. I found out that around the time of the Civil War, or even earlier, there were reports of the Jews wanting to rebuild the temple. The
Hmm.
fact is that
Of course they want to. They've been wanting to since it was
we've
destroyed.
never stopped. We've never stopped studying about the sacrifices.
Right.
We've never stopped praying for the rebuilding of
Right.
the temple. We've never stopped studying the details. I'm of the priesthood, and I have certain prerogatives to exercise or not. If I remained within the Jewish community, there's some things I could have done or not
Right.
done, and so on. So don't if somebody is telling you, oh, there are priests now studying about the sacrifices. That's right, and they've been doing it all these
Right.
years because they don't know when they're going to have to be ready.
Right.
And even in any case, they believe that these are that these sacrifices were there and ought to be
Mhm.
studied. They're part of God's word.
Or, like if somebody was like, somebody's figured out the exact kind of dye that they use. Okay, cool. But like, again, people have been studying that for a while and
Yeah.
come up with
So
different
anyway,
theories.
don't get hysterical about rumors. Just keep up with the news in reputable news sources, whatever you normally read to get your news.
If you can find them.
And when things begin to happen, you'll know. You don't have to you don't have to subscribe to some new special newsletter, some special prophetic
Well, there goes that side business.
bulletin or whatever. When things happen, you're going to know, and
Yeah.
everybody's going to know.
Right. Of course. Yeah. That's the fun thing about eschatology is
Yeah.
that yeah. Anyway.
So okay,
Yes,
so
you can be a premillennialist and not be crazy. I'm just saying. No, but people say that. People are like anybody who wants to take what is, I guess, more traditional view about Revelation and that most of it is prophetic and hasn't happened yet. Um, you have to just be on your guard and freaking out and looking for every little detail and writing off the world. And no, that's not true. That does not necessarily logically follow. So, Just
Okay.
saying, we don't believe that. We believe Revelation is prophetic, and we do believe that there will be a temple rebuilt. We believe all these things, but I also believe right now my job is to make the world a better place currently, and we'll see what happens otherwise. That's my thought.
Yes, when I was in the yeshiva, uh, we had the idea the Messiah was going to come very soon.
Yep.
And then when I came into the Church of God. Uh, when I walked in, I mentioned this in. I give a message once a week, and a couple of weeks, well, last week or the week before, I mentioned May 6, 1968. I walked into a Bible study, and the minister was talking about we might only have 3.5 years to go, before we have to flee to a place of safety. This was 1968.
Yep.
And I agreed with him. I mean, I already knew that before I walked in the door because I studied the literature of the church,
Uh-huh.
and we had the idea that things were going to come to a head in 1975. Well, I'm speaking now in 2022.
Right.
But people don't ever seem to learn the lesson.
No.
They just,
And it makes sense. I mean, you obviously, kind of bought into it at the time or whatever because it made sense. It can always make sense. You can make a good case for it. So don't get too hard on yourself either. If you've ever fallen into that trap. No, if you've ever fallen for that trap, no, it makes sense. I mean, it's even more. Jesus says, there's going to be rumors of wars and all that. So this is something the Bible warns us about. So don't panic. It's like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have done it. But don't keep making the same mistake. Don't just keep moving the goalposts because that's all that people tend to do is they just keep moving the goalposts.
What if you had lived during the 14th century,
right?
The bubonic plague.
Yep.
It came and went.
Yeah.
It came and went.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So that being said, we are going to move further into the instructions of the temple, and we
Tabernacle.
will. Sorry, the tabernacle. Woo! We were talking about the temple, so yes. Yes, the tabernacle. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you tomorrow. Not sure if I did this right. Oh, I did. Okay. All right. Sean was asking, why won't they just build a temple already? I'm pretty sure that was a rhetorical question, Sean. If you are not aware,
you'll start World War III.
Yeah, right now they cannot because another group controls that territory, and to even walk into that space is criminal. Basically,
right. Jews aren't allowed to pray, or Christians on that area.
Yeah,
right now.
Right. If you start people do it sometimes as like a civil protest, and they get arrested. And they don't even get arrested by the people controlling the territory. They get arrested by the government because the government is trying to prevent things from escalating.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not like a bunch of religious zealots have to stop you. The government's stopping you so that the religious zealots don't get hot and bothered about it. So, yeah.
It was really scary. When I was in Montreal, I came into the home of a fellow that I think somehow I knew he was Iranian, and on the wall of his home, he didn't have Mecca. He had the Dome of the Rock. He had Jerusalem there.
Yeah.
So in recent years, they've made a bigger deal about Jerusalem. The Mecca is the holy city where they have to make a pilgrimage, and yet in recent years, many Muslims have made a bigger deal about Jerusalem, and it was kind of scary. As I said, I went into this fellow's home in Montreal, and evidently an immigrant from Iran. And on the wall, instead of seeing Mecca, I saw the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah.
So it was kind of scary.
All right. Okay, so you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. What is going on with sculptures of angelic beings? Is this somehow a violation of the second commandment? Well, we're going to talk about that and other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan, and here with my father, Dr. Kaplan. Together, we're going through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy, a little bit every day. Today, we are reading Exodus 25, 17 through 30. I'll be reading from the Robert Alter translation. and then we will discuss what we have read. And you shall make a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits in length, its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, hammered work you shall make them at the 2 edges of the cover, and make 1 cherub at one edge and 1 cherub at the other edge. From the cover you shall make the cherubim at both its edges, and the cherubim shall spread wings above, shielding their cover with their wings, and their faces towards each other. Toward the cover the faces of the cherubim shall be. And you shall set the covering upon the ark from above, and in the ark you shall set the tablets of the covenant that I shall give you. And I shall meet with you there and speak with you from above the covering between the 2 cherubim that are on the top of the ark of the covenant, all that I shall charge you regarding the Israelites. And you shall make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits its length, and 1 cubit its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, and make for it golden molding all around. And you shall make a frame for it, a hand's breadth all around, and you shall make a golden molding for its frame all around. And you shall make 4 gold rings for it, and set the rings at the 4 corners which are at its 4 legs. Facing the frame the rings shall be as housings for the poles to carry the table. And you shall make the poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, and the table shall be carried with them. And you shall make its bowls, and its shovels, and its jars, and its chalices, from which libation is done, pure gold you shall make them. And you shall set on the table the bread of the presence before me perpetually. All right, so some more specific instructions, but one of the more, contentious ones, or maybe confusing ones, is this idea that as part of the cover of the Ark of the Covenant, you have these figures of something from the angelic realm. And the question is, well, doesn't it say in the second commandment to not make any sort of sculpture of anything from heaven? Isn't that a disagreement? So, what do you say about that?
Well, as a source of worship, you don't worship the cherubim. You notice that the mercy seat, there's no depiction of God there. There's just the mercy seat. It's just a covering that is, and so his presence is there, but there's no depiction of God. There's a depiction of the throne and what's going on around the throne, but not. So I would say that this is not a matter of worship. It's a matter of just a depiction of the area around the throne and the beings around the throne.
Now, do you think that?
And by the way, let me say also,
yeah,
this was something that was in the Holy of Holies ultimately, so that nobody ever saw it except the high priest once a year.
Well, when they carried it around.
Well, yeah, that's true. They did carry it around.
Yeah.
So then they would have seen it.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, somebody random, touches it and dies, so it wasn't,
That's
So it wasn't completely hidden.
No,
it does go in front of everybody, like there's a distance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's not completely hidden, but you're right. It's not. It's still isolated to a certain extent. It's like if somebody wanted to read this and be like, "Hey, how about in my church sanctuary, I put in statues of angels around the podium in order to indicate kind of something," I would say that's not an appropriate application of this, because what this is symbolizing is God's presence, right? So are you trying to say that your minister is God? Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And the purpose of it is very different than that. I'm trying to think of an example that would even come up nowadays.
It's somewhat unique. Also, the structure.
It is. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant is just a unique artifact altogether.
I was going to.
Now, what if somebody wanted to make a replica of the Ark of the Covenant as part of their church structure or something? I feel like that's a little inappropriate too, because of the sacredness of the artifact. Now, we've talked to replicas, and people do it, and they usually will have a replica of the Ark of the Covenant as part of it for educational purpose.
Educational, but not as part of an actual sanctuary. And I would like.
But what about as part of like decor? Which you're not worshiping it, but it's just iconography that you relate to. What do you think of using it as iconography? Like in a stained glass window or a mural or something like that. What do you think? I'm getting in the weeds. I like
I
asking
wouldn't
these
think
questions.
I'm not sure it's a problem as a mural.
Okay. What if the mural, depending on where the mural is placed,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. As long as we
If it's
want.
like that's like the foyer of the church, and you
Mhm.
have some religious symbolism, and one of them's Ark of the Covenant, that doesn't really weird you out. If it's like right behind the speaker, that
Yeah.
might get kind of like,
Right.
what exactly is going on? Okay.
I would also like to say that if you look at the Bible, there was a central sanctuary, and there were a lot of rituals that went on there,
Uh huh.
but that's where it should be.
Yes.
The local church shouldn't have that. The local church was basically to gather together for fellowship, worship, and instruction, and not a lot of complex rituals.
Okay.
In other words, that is restricted to the central sanctuary.
Right.
People, depending on your predilection, some people want everything simple and reject a lot of ritual, but some people seem to want to have a lot of ritual, that somehow they relate to that. That- I
And
was
you mean ritual, not structure. There's a
Yeah,
difference.
but what I'm saying is that it seems to me that if you want to talk about God's religion, that a lot of the complex rituals, incense, and investments of priests and all that's restricted to the central sanctuary, not something that should be done in every local area. So I would disagree with the concept that Christianity should have gone that route that it
Hmm.
did. That you have, in a local church, you build this huge, elaborate structure. You have, poor people all around, and then this huge, big structure in the, and people are
This is
practically stuck.
interesting. I think we're
Yeah,
gonna have a disagreement here, but keep going.
and then, but not only that, but within it, you have all very ornate, very elaborate, and then the priests are dressed up in elaborate
Hmm.
attire, and then there's all kinds of rituals going on. I don't believe that's the intent.
I kind of disagree with you a
All
little
right.
bit. I'm going to get a little nuanced. I know this is fun. A little nuanced in terms of what you're saying about a big elaborate building among the poor. To some degree, I think that's true. But to some degree, I think it's the poor is always among us, and giving God our best is valuable.
All right.
And I think for us to, as a culture, give a percentage of our income and funnel it to a spot,
Right.
the idea that part of that is to create a beautiful location in
Okay.
which, for us,
Yeah.
imagine
No.
I would love on a weekly Sabbath to go to a very aesthetically pleasing
Okay.
place
Yeah.
and think about the finer things in life.
No.
That would be of great value to me, and I would rather be a little bit poorer on average and have that experience, and have it be a shared experience that
Okay.
lots of people get to do.
That's fair enough. But
And I know that's not exactly what you're talking about. I just
right.
wanted to get a little nuanced, just in case people thought that you were very, like, it's almost like aestheticism or something. You know what I
No.
mean? You can go the other way. I don't think you have to mean in a cardboard box,
I
because
used.
people are, because there are homeless people around you,
Oh,
does not mean that you
right.
have to be that modest, because
No.
that's not really the point.
When Daniel was a boy, we met in the most maybe built beautiful building in the world. We met in an auditorium in Pasadena, California. That was for inch maybe the nicest
And just in
available.
case you're trying to Google and figure out what he's talking about,
Yeah.
we can say we do not, in fact, endorse a lot of the positions of that church. So, yes. I just want to get that out there. That
Well,
was where we were at the time.
in later years, that building was used as a set for a
And
movie.
I was not even a willing participant necessarily, because I was a kid.
He was
So
just a
don't hold it
he
against
was
me.
just a boy.
Don't hold it against me.
But no, but no, what was I saying? That no,
You were saying
that
it was a beautiful building. It was a beautiful
no. But
building. I agree with that.
I'm saying there was a movie that many of them have seen,
Uh-oh.
where they did a concert, and that building was used as a setting for the
That
movie.
thing you do?
Yeah.
So now they're really going to know where it is. Thanks.
Oh, okay.
Skeletons in my closet. It's
Uh,
okay. A lot of us grow up in cults. It's just how it works. Um, so here are some things that people have pointed out regarding these instructions. So we've talked a little bit about the cover and the sculpture and all that. The other things we have mentioned here are the bread, and some people, critics of the Bible, will be like, well, this is just a pagan custom that they just adopted. And okay, but here's the thing.
everybody prays. Everybody. what you
No, no, no. But what they're saying is leaving out food like that. But see, here's the thing: is that that's not what this is.
they ate it.
They ate it. Exactly,
Yeah.
right? This is very different. So even if you want to say it's a response to the pagan custom, which I really can't stand, I hate the idea that God is reacting to pagan customs, but fair enough. Let's say he was. This is a refute of that. This is a refute of you have to put out food for the gods and it just decomposes over time. It's no, there's food that's set, and what we are reminded of is the bread of life, the God sustaining us. So we have this symbol, and then the priests get to eat it. It doesn't just decompose and serve no function because God doesn't operate like that.
We can. I figured we would say more about it
The bread?
if we're alive and well and we get to Leviticus 24. That we will talk more about it there, and we'll connect it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we'll connect it with the second chapter of Mark.
Sure.
But I figure we'll get there later.
That's fine. That's a little tease. But, I'm just throwing that out there because it's brought up here.
Right, yeah.
And then you also have these jars and chalices. And again, people kind of make a thing. It's like, well, it's like, again, where they would put out stuff for the gods and stuff like that. But these serve a very different function than they would have done at that time. Ultimately, I'm not even sure. Did they even put anything in them?
In what?
In the jars and the chalices?
Well, depending on, I'd have to go back and see. There's drink offerings and there's.
Right, but they didn't just always have them, I don't think. Maybe, I don't know. I thought they were used for the function, and then a lot of the time they would sit empty, which is different than pagan ritual.
Well, yeah, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, well, pagan ritual would, again, you would put it out, and it would just be set out for the gods, and it would just decompose, and at least this is my knowledge. If you're more of an expert about that, please comment below if I'm incorrect. I don't want to step beyond, but that is something that I've heard, that was more of a thing, and it certainly was the way bread. I mean, I've seen it nowadays. People put out food for statues and stuff like that, and the food just rots because
the time has come.
Yes.
That reminds me of a story.
The time has come. The walrus said.
That reminds me of a story. This Chinese person was honoring his ancestors, and he put out food by the grave.
Yep.
Now an American came along and he put flowers by the grave of his, let's say his grandfather.
Right.
So he called over to the Chinese guy and said, when is your ancestor going to come and eat that food? And the Chinese guy said, the same time that your ancestor comes out and smells those flowers. But anyway,
yeah,
just a story.
No.
But I wanted to go to Hebrews, the 8th chapter.
Okay.
And around verse 5, talking about the tabernacle, he who served the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, see that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So there's symbolism there. There's heavenly things that are being symbolized there. So there was another verse I wanted to get into.
And I wanted to ask you about that, but you can keep going.
The 10th chapter of Hebrews, it speaks of the Holy of Holies, and that's symbolic of God's throne. And now we have access to the heavenly Holy of Holies as Christians through Jesus Christ. And I'm going to Hebrews 10:19. Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so on. So I just wanted to bring that out. There's a lot of lessons, New Testament lessons we can derive as we go over this material.
But this is a question, and you might not have an easy answer for it, but because of the nature of the way the tabernacle is created, you end up with a pattern of 4 a lot, like because of squares and rectangles and things like that. And you might assume that that's kind of an interesting way of going about it because it could have been a different pattern. Like there's lots of different ways to put together structures. Even something like a table, you need only 3 legs in order to make a table stand up. So why do you suppose there's so much 4 going on? Do you have a speculation on that?
Well, 4 is symbolic of the whole world, the 4 corners of the earth. And there's 4 empires that rule the world.
That makes sense.
Before the millennium, the 5th monarchy is Jesus Christ's return.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it ties it to the material.
Yeah, the world that God created.
Right.
His presence.
Our material existence.
His presence is in the tabernacle, but ultimately pervade the whole world.
Interesting. Yeah, because often, with God, you either think of three, like Trinitarian, or you think of seven, like divine. So four was just kind of interesting. And okay, cool. Although 3 plus 4 is 7, so maybe you have something there. All right. All right. Anything else you want to talk about before we move further?
No.
Okay. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, call up your friends because it's a great year to read the law. Oh wait,
one other thing, cherubim come up all the way in Genesis.
Yes, with a flaming sword,
Yeah,
right?
so
And so they're associated with the judgment of sin. So it
that's
connects.
a good,
It just brings it all
that's a
full
good
circle.
point.
Although here's the difference, right? What did the cherubim look like in Genesis? It was this, flaming sword, a very frightening thing. Here, it does not appear that way. It appears more um, I don't want to say loving. That sounds too flippant, but you know what I mean, like protective. The
Right.
wings are outstretched, and this is going to be a symbol of forgiveness. This is the repair of that. So
Okay.
it is a change, right?
Well, it's the mercy seat. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
So we're getting nuance on cherubim too. Cherubim are not just forces of judgment; they're also force. They also symbolize the force of restoration.
Very good.
Thank you.
My son is getting eloquent as he gets older.
in my ancient years, look at my beard. Yes, I have 2 kids. That does help. All right. So anyway, please like, subscribe, hit the bell. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, I need to fix you because we need to fix all of us because we're going into the matrix.
Okay, where's that? I want to see where the mercy seat is mentioned.
It's because of this. Hold on. Can I? Only Sean is on, so I want to do a switch. Hold on.
Okay.
Just let me get past you.
All right. Just okay.
I want to hit this light, and I want to see if I can fix.
Okay. But I'm looking for the mercy seat.
I want to see if I can fix that so it's not so dark. Because maybe then it won't have to.
Where's the mercy seat? Where's the scripture with the mercy seat?
I can look for it a second. It's still kind of pixely. Even worse. Now we will fix it. Another shruggy music video. Can you sit up? I'm gonna see.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still a little not the best. Hold on. I can't figure out my lighting today for some reason.
Where's the mercy seat?
Hold on. Yeah, keep looking for the mercy seat and I'll figure out lighting. Yeah, maybe if I get this other light on. Excuse me. Alright. Okay.
I want to see where the mercy seat is because I think it would just come right out at me, but I'm not.
Alright, hold on. I'll get you.
With a link.
The simulation is malfunctioning. Thank you, Sean.
You shall overlay it with pure gold. You shall make it.
Where do you? Exodus 25:17.
All right.
Is what is usually translated 25:18, 25:19, 25:20. Depends on the translation.
What? Oh, yeah, he just calls it the ark cover.
Yeah, KJV calls it the mercy seat. HCSB does as well. NASB does as well.
Yeah, okay.
It's a translation issue.
Oh, yeah, all right, yeah.
Not every translation calls it that. Yeah, altar calls it a cover, yeah.
Oh, he just calls it a cover?
I think so.
Okay, wow. Well, it's
a lot of people do.
It could. All right. I'll just. Yeah, I might just mention that. There was something else I was. Oh yeah. Let me just.
Yeah, he doesn't even mention the alternate translation. But it's only a few. KJV, HCSB, NASB does. Everybody else does not. Apparently, even the NKJV does not.
What does the RSV say? That would be good to know.
The RSV. Hold on. The RSV or the NRSV?
The NRSV.
Okay. The new reviled slander. um, Mercy Seat. So it does too. Or the cover. It has a footnote.
Oh, the NRSVC. That's good because they're secular scholars and they're still saying mercy seat. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, NASB is pretty. Oh, no, NKJV does too. So this just doesn't have the NKJV in it, so I didn't see it.
I just want to see something else here.
What does the ESV say?
Let me try.
Which is the ESV says mercy seat as well. So mercy seat's pretty popular.
All right, let me try another possibility here.
What's the Hebrew word Sean is asking?
Kaporeth, which you could relate to atonement. You know, it could relate to that.
Yeah, I cannot for the life of me figure this out. Okay, I need to move my whole screen maybe. I can. Oh no, now I'm gonna lose it over here. Ugh. It's really hard to get two people in a shot in this space. I need a bigger green screen. I'll have to invest in one. Sorry, Sean. Thankfully, it's mostly the sound you're looking for anyway.
All right, just one more thing.
I know it looks a little strange for us to be all pixely. Ugh, it's even worse. How do I get this? I guess I'll crop it, and then he'll just disappear, which is maybe better than looking pixely all the time. Okay. Here, I'm going to crop you, and then I want you to move more to your right in just a second, so that you don't get cut off. But at least now we're not pixely as much. Okay. Yeah, move more to your right. Thank you. Yeah, that's a little bit better.
All right,
Message retracted. What did you say, Sean? I don't like retracting messages. Just come out with it. No censoring. Okay. You want to move on at some point in life? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay.
We're still in the 25th chapter?
We are, but we're going to go to the 26th chapter this time.
Oh, we finished the 25th chapter.
Yep. No.
But we're going to go through the 25th.
25:31. Yeah, we're going to go through it into the 26th. Are you ready?
Ready.
I'm a little off screen. Yeah, well, I'm a little off in general, so you're right.
Well, no, you want to be on screen. Look at you. You need to. Yeah, you have to be on screen.
Daniel.
We want to see you.
I'm right here.
All right.
Hi.
All right.
I'm a little bit country. Okay. Why do you say Daniel? This is nothing. It's just Daniel.
Okay.
Oh, I guess you're saying Daniel was off screen. Okay. All right. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Wait, what was I going to say? Oh, yes. What is the purpose of art in worship? We're going to talk about that and other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan, and together we're going through the books of the law. Today we're going to read Exodus 25:31 through Exodus 26:14, and I'll be reading from the Robert Alter translation. And you shall make a lampstand of pure gold, hammered work it shall be made. Its base and its shaft, its cups, its calyxes, and its blossoms shall be from that work. and 6 shafts going out from its side, 3 shafts of the lampstand from its side, and 3 shafts of the lampstand from its other side. 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the one shaft, calyx and blossom, and the 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the other shaft, calyx and blossom. Thus for the 6 shafts that go out from the lampstand. And on the lampstand, 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, their calyxes and their blossoms, and a calyx as part of it under every 2 shafts. A calyx is part of it under every 2 shafts for its 6 shafts coming out from the lampstand. Their calyxes and their shafts shall be part of it, all of it hammered work, pure gold. And you shall make it 7 lamps, and its lamps shall be mounted, and give light in front of it, and its tongs and its fire pans, pure gold. With a talent of pure gold shall it be made, with all its furnishings. And see, and make it by their pattern, which are shown, which you are shown on the mountain. Yeah, that's important. We'll talk about that later. And the tabernacle you shall make with 10 panels of twisted linen, with indigo and purple and crimson, and with cherubim. Designer's work you shall make them. The length of the panel is 28 cubits, and the width of 4 cubits to the one panel, a single measure for all the panels. 5 of the panels shall be joined to each other, and the other 5 joined to each other. And you shall make indigo loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the set, and thus shall you do on the edge of the outermost panel in the other set. 50 loops you shall make in the one panel, and 50 loops you shall make in the outermost panel, which is the other set, the loops opposite one another. And you shall make 50 golden clasps, and you shall join the panels to one another with the clasps, that the tabernacle be one whole. And you shall make goat hair panels for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 panels you shall make them. The length of the one panel 30 cubits, and the width of 4 cubits to the panel, a single measure for the 11 panels. And you shall join 5 of the panels by themselves, and 6 of the panels by themselves. And you shall double over the 6th panel at the front of the tent. And you shall make 50 loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the one set, and 50 loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the other set. And you shall make 50 bronze clasps, and bring the clasps through the loops, and you shall join the tent, that it become whole. And the overhang left over in the tent panels, half of the leftover panel you shall let hang over the back of the tabernacle. And the cubit on one side and the cubit on the other is in what is left over in the length of the tent panels shall hang over both sides of their tabernacles to cover it. And you shall make a covering for the tent of red and ram skins, and a covering of ochre dyed skins above. All right, so we're getting a lot of details going on, and specifically in this section, what we have are some artistic things going on. We have work with, I guess, I don't know what you specifically call it. It's like blacksmithing or something, some sort of the way you craft. I'm not sure what that artistic term is called. Forgery, I guess, to make the. Wasn't it called forgery when you're making something out of metal?
Forging, I guess.
Yeah, forging. Yeah, forging something. Forgery. Yeah. I think it is called. It's not called forgery.
No,
that's just when you're trying to fake something. Okay, forging. All right. I apologize if that's your craft, because I probably just insulted you. But we have artisans working that way. We have artisans working with fabric and things like that. And that kind of gets to what my first point was, which is, what do you do with art in terms of your religious experience? Is there a place for artistic work? And I would say the Bible does in fact say yes. I think sometimes people do get a little bit into what's like, aestheticism, and they start to wonder, can you make beautiful things for God, or is that kind of showing off, or is that inappropriate? And what you see here is the tabernacle not only is artistic, but it's the best of the best. It's the finest. It's high quality things. So the idea that and then I talked about it last time, but the fine oils they poured over Jesus, and they're like, well, what about the poor? And he said, the poor will always have with us. The point is not as an organization, as a religious expression, that we have to just be like monks living in like a cave or something, right? Or in the most modest of things. The point is how you use those materials, right? What are you using those materials to do? What do they symbolize? What do they help direct your attention towards? Things like that.
Yeah, people were given ability, creative ability, and that's something that if you have that kind of talent, you should develop that talent. It gives great benefit to other people.
Yeah. And I honestly think this is something the church has lost a lot. And you could say, what, Daniel? There's artists all over the place. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think if you look at the modern Christian church, there is a disrespect of the point of art. And I think one reason why is because, to be honest, and this is somebody I feel like I have a certain amount of artistic ability. I just realized that our background was not our normal background. I'll move it to this. Artistic ability. I have a certain amount. I designed this shirt, by the way, and I believe that within church organizations, there is very little done to try to encourage people to use artistic abilities for the organization. For example, you can go to so many church buildings and you do not see any representation of the talent of the individuals in the building at all. There might be people that are really good at painting and really good artists. What do they have a festival where they line their hallways with, paintings and drawings from the people in the church? Sometimes people do stuff like that, but there is not nearly as much of that as I see in secular areas, and I think that is sad. And I think one reason why is because artists such as myself, well, the artist personality tends to be experimental. It tends to want to challenge the norm. It tends to want to be avant-garde. And the problem with that is, well, the Bible is a lot about foundational principles. It's about morals. And so you have to literally take a personality type that wants to kind of question things and tell them, there's a certain amount of creativity you have, but within this framework, right? And that's a challenging thing to do because you have people throttling you on the religious side, and then you have the more artistic types that are like, well, if you're throttling yourself, you're kind of selling out, you're not being a true artist. So you got to find that balance. And it's hard. And I think that's one reason why God instructs them to use it, because we're going to see how it gets abused further on, right?
Right. Yeah. It ought to be possible to do it within the biblical guidelines.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But within the biblical guidelines is not some sort of, like I said, it's not some sort of dour thing. It's vibrant. This is a little bit obnoxious. I mean, in terms of, in a way, it's almost ostentatious. Like, you can give people a little bit more wiggle room than I think some people do in terms of the way that they artistically express themselves in boldness and vividness. The importance is not the importance is, are they trying to bring their best before God? Are they doing the due diligence, for quality, right? So yes, we need to be critical of what people are bringing before God in a sense, because it needs to be quality. It should be the best of the best, right? It shouldn't just be the good enough, right? So that's tricky because that steps on toes and stuff, but that's something to keep in mind. But then also I would say, not only does it need to be quality, it needs to be the best of the best. Like I said, it needs to have a vividness to it, a boldness to it, not a blandness to it. That's what I get out of here.
In the Bible, we see God gives gifts. It's not only to the preacher, but He gives gifts
Right,
to the artisan, to the architect.
right,
God inspires that aspect of life as
right.
well, and that's an important part of human endeavor.
Yeah.
And that's not just the speaker.
Mhm.
It's also,
Well, I think the art speaks for itself.
right.
I think that's the point, right?
But
There are principles we're supposed to get out of this.
the builder, the artisan,
Hmm.
the one the architect, the one who also does the actual, let's say, brute work. God inspires him as well.
Yep.
And we have to. I think we should keep that in mind. We'll see more of that later on as we go through Exodus.
Right. So what also is interesting, that you get from this and later on is that, okay, so these Israelites were slaves in Egypt, right? But part of what they did had to involve some of these artistic things because they were able to do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes I think we can get this notion that, okay, they were just kind of the brute labor moving heavy rocks around, but there obviously was a lot more they were doing,
Probably,
right?
yeah.
And think of and that also can help reframe it, right? Imagine they were people that had to build idols over and over and over
Right.
again. Well, then it kind of naturally, it's like their natural job, and so like, oh, okay, well, we'll just build an idolatrous representation of God because we're kind of used to that. That's what we normally do, right? That's just normal. That's what everybody else does.
A cubit could be about in America about a foot and a half, but there was a royal cubit a little bit more, slightly more than 2 feet. From the South African perspective, like it could be about half a meter or maybe around 2/3 of a meter.
He says
Uh,
that because we know we have a listener in South Africa.
what?
Well, because they're not the only people that use the
No,
metric
no,
system.
everybody uses metric, I think, except the Americans.
I was just pointing out to the audience. You said South African because we have a South
Oh,
African
okay, I
listener that we
see.
are aware of. I'm sure that we have listeners that have the metric system in other
I
places.
was very, impressed when I lived in Canada that older Canadians were still using, as I recall, inches and feet and miles when they spoke.
Oh
And
wow.
maybe because they live close to the U.S. or they see a lot of
Hmm.
U.S. TV,
Yeah.
or maybe they just were being a little bit stubborn. But I remember being in Canada, the signs were in meters,
Right.
or kilometers, so many kilometers to this city and so on. But yet when I spoke with Canadians, a lot of times they were still using what was in the UK years ago before they switched to metric. So anyway,
Right. 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 Now we need to make a correction because the Bible just slapped us in the face. Now, because on the last episode we were talking about the cherubim associated with the mercy seat, but here I see there are cherubim mentioned on these panels. Now, where are these panels? Does it say, at least according to his translation, it says 10 panels of twisted linen and indigo and purple and crimson with cherubim. What does that mean?
well, they're woven
Right. So
into the
we have a
fabric.
depiction of cherubim not just in the Holy of Holies, right?
Yeah, that's a good
So we
point.
need to correct ourselves. The
Yeah,
Bible
correct.
just corrected us.
Okay, excellent. Yeah.
So what does that mean? Because we were talking in the last episode about can you have depictions of angelic people around your
This is a
sanctuary?
little less extreme. The ones in the Holy of Holies are like statuary.
Right.
This is more like
Right.
a decoration
So
on
you
a
think there
curtain.
is a difference between having a sculpture, which is something because of the second commandment you need to be more careful
Right,
about.
I would say.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to give the audience a
Yeah,
consistency in the view, right?
I would
So your
say.
consistency would be something like statuary, we have to be very
Very
cautious about.
careful about it.
Something like a motif is very different.
Yeah, I would say.
I think that makes sense. That seems reasonable because it's like a
Okay.
pattern. If you think of it like a wallpaper or something, you don't put a lot of attribution to that. So I gotcha.
And then there's a way of doing it. Uh,
Which
I
we don't exactly
No,
know.
but I noticed that in certain religions, well, a particular one that I won't mention by name, when they picture people,
Why?
they have this
Why
halo.
don't you just say it?
Well, no, okay. In the Catholic tradition,
Yes.
they picture people with like a
Yeah,
halo
it's a
around them,
golden sort of
and
thing.
that's I don't
But
think
do you think
that's
that they really think that's how they looked, or do you think they're just trying to make an artistic interpretation about it? Because it does say like Moses' face shone and they couldn't even look at it and things like that.
well
Isn't that
Moses,
a
but
little
yeah,
bit of
but
artistic throttling?
Moses, but not a lot of these other people.
Yeah, but
Uh,
isn't it just a way to say that they're righteous? Because then you
uh,
know that is a righteous character being
okay,
pictured.
all right. Maybe I'm being
Yeah.
too
But see, this is
too
where I get
finicky.
at. This is the challenge, right?
Right,
Because when
yeah,
you
right,
have you need to have these sort of discussions. This
right,
is healthy. The healthy thing is for an artist, but you know what I mean. The healthy thing is for
right,
an
yeah,
artist to be like, well, I want to do this and I want to go this, and then for somebody that's maybe not as artistically minded, more
right.
what do you want to call it?
Legalistic, or I don't
No,
know.
not even legalistic,
Or,
like more like what do you call it? Specific
yeah,
or um uh uh
prosaic. I don't know.
exact. What is that? Like no, like an exactness. That's what I'm getting at. Somebody who wants it kind of on the nose
Yeah,
versus somebody who's willing to be creative for the sake of making a point.
more rigid personality, maybe.
Literalist. That's what I mean.
Or whatever.
So there's a difference between being literalist and artistic, right?
Oh,
Because a
right,
lot of art is metaphor, it's something, and so somebody might be like, well, I don't really get that. What are you trying to say when you have this depiction and then the artist can explain? And then you can have a conversation because sometimes the literalist is right.
But
Because what
certainly,
what people can walk away from is a weird notion of something because the metaphor is poor. And so you do need to have those
but
conversations.
certainly in the Bible, when it comes to literature, metaphors all over the place.
Which is why I'm not as concerned about
You know,
about visual metaphor.
it's like, you know,
Right, but that's the
Judah
reason.
is a lion's whelp, and on
No,
it goes.
exactly. So
Yeah,
what if somebody wanted to visually demonstrate that verse?
it,
It would look kind of interesting, right? So and you're not and less people think I think my dad's like ridiculously rigid. My dad certainly has endorsed and enjoyed visually symbolic things, you know.
in my house,
Yeah, right.
I have Chagall's windows.
Right.
You
Which is all
know,
kinds of
and
visual representations of the
that used to
tribes.
be a background to my messages.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at it while I'm speaking. It
Yeah.
used to be
Yeah.
behind me.
Yeah.
But Chagall's windows are up in my home. Not
Yeah.
all of them.
Right.
I wish I had all 12.
Right.
I think I have 4 of them.
Right. And whenever you do something like that,
By the way,
and sometimes, to be honest, getting abstract is more appropriate.
Chagall's windows are his depiction of Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33 of the 12 tribes of
Hmm.
Israel. And that you find them in the chapel of the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem.
Hmm.
But they're used in a lot of different ways as keychains
Hmm.
and as
Very
on the
beautiful
wall
artwork.
and on my.
And there is beautiful artwork. I will say I'm going to agree with my dad, and I don't think it's just my cultural bias, but I do tend to find stained glass and artistic works from the Jewish culture fit more within my biblical framework than say the Catholic culture. And that's because of in my opinion, the way it's done, I just appreciate more. I think there's a certain amount of thoughtfulness that I like. I would certainly rather look at Chagall's windows and say the Sistine Chapel.
Although that is impressive art,
Oh yeah, and I think there's something really great about it, and I think it's sad
but it's
that
yes.
there aren't other like why isn't there why don't we have that anymore? Like people, there were atheists that were upset when Notre Dame caught on fire, you know, and that's a nice thing. It's a nice thing that there are things that people just respect so much because it's so well done. It's so beautiful. It is the best of the best. Let me just kind of get on a little bit of a soapbox right now. Currently, I think there is a crisis, particularly in music going on, and people badmouth it for being simplistic and not artistically interesting. And the truth of the matter is in many ways they are correct. And this should not be something that the secular world could do. People didn't do that for Handel's Messiah, and it's not just a bias because they don't like the lyrical content. There is a reason why, and it's because there's a certain blandness because it's about being kind of commercial, it's about being kind of safe. It's not to me fitting what with this sort of attitude. And I'm not just saying, every individual example. I'm just talking about a cultural norm. I don't feel the cultural norm right now going on about artistic expression and how you do worship is this. I don't think we're concerned with the best of the best. I don't think we're concerned with how we're coming across to people who aren't in our religion. Some people joined the church back in the day just because the buildings were beautiful or because the music was effective, right? And I know you could say, well, some people are moved by the music nowadays and whatever. Fair enough, but I don't think there's enough. There. Whenever people bring it up, they often get batted down. They're like, "Well, how dare you be so critical of other Christians? You're just being a mean-spirited person." And yes, that can be the case, but often when people are challenging people to do better, it is a good thing. It is a good thing to challenge people to do better. We should be presenting God our best,
I
and
wouldn't,
that matters.
but I wouldn't endorse that depiction of God and Adam there that you
Yeah, well,
mentioned.
the second commandment violation kind of.
That I think was
Yeah,
over the edge.
right. I also don't think it's very nice to Adam to have him naked like that because, I mean, yes,
Well,
I know he was naked and not ashamed when he was alone with his wife, but I don't think he would want people to envision him nude the rest of his life. I mean, really? That seems kind of inappropriate. You know what I mean? And that kind of static thing. It's one thing like maybe in a movie, in an illustrated movie or something. It's another thing when you have like a painting you look at all the time and it's you as a nude person. I just don't think that's very
I didn't
appropriate.
think we were going to necessarily get into the area of music, but I will say that in the Psalms there's about 30 different titles, and many of them seem to be different kinds of music that were used for the Psalms. There are various kinds of music that were used. if you look at Psalm 96 and Psalm 98, that talks about singing a new song to the Eternal. So you can take the words of the Bible, but you can work with them in various ways and various genres, and
And I mean, you can even
yeah,
craft new words. That's not the end of the world.
right, no, right,
It's just when you're doing that, what's your purpose? Are you
right,
giving God your best?
right,
Are you trying to push to be the
right,
best poetry in the world, or are you, it's good enough?
right. And another thing, I wasn't going to get into this either, but um, there's a tendency in religion to sort of preserve older things as if
Hmm.
they're better,
Yes,
and and older things are not necessarily better,
right.
you know. Uh,
Yeah.
Styles change, fashion changes.
Hmm.
Now, modesty should be practiced, but styles can change.
Hmm.
I mean, for example, in my community, there are people that still dress like Polish noblemen of maybe the 17th
Right.
century.
Or
That
like the
they
Amish,
have these big fur hats.
Yeah.
Now I doubt that if you went back to the ancient Middle East, anybody would have looked like that.
Right.
And yet here are these
And they froze in some
here are these
place.
Jewish
Yeah.
people that have these big fur hats,
Hmm.
and so on.
Yeah, people have a
And
tendency to be like, this is when
yeah,
society went off the edge. Boop!
yeah, you're
And you
right.
just freeze
Freeze
there
there.
as if that really makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you can do that, but I guess you have to go back to the Garden of Eden and you have to be naked and live on your own in isolation in the woods.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if you're really
Right.
doing that, it's
Right.
like,
Right.
take your wife and go out in the woods and,
Mhm.
and do that. All right. Anything else you want to get to before we move on?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So
Oh, yeah. Okay.
now that I've offended all the Christian artists out there, again, I'm not intending to offend you. I'm intending to build you up and ask you to try to give God your best. And if you feel like you're already doing your best, then fair enough. If the shoe fits, if the shoe doesn't fit, then I'm not talking to you. Okay? If I am, try harder. That's all. I work with artists all the time, so I just want to be clear. I'm very supportive of the artistic process. And also that doesn't mean, let me give another example. That doesn't mean if your 8-year-old kid in your congregation wants to present something to the congregation, you have to be like, well, that's not on our standard. Of course, that's not what I'm talking about. Of course, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. If you like this show, please like it, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you tomorrow. What?
A horrible thing happened. I happened to be just, deep in thought, and so some saliva sort of drooled out of my mouth.
Oh,
I don't know how bad that's going to look. I don't know.
I think it's okay.
You
I don't even think it'll show up in the camera. I don't know.
let's
Did
hope.
you notice, Sean? You can tell
Oh,
us.
Sean is overhearing this.
I'm so embarrassed.
It was like I was just sort
It's
of
okay.
drooling or something.
It's okay.
Like a little baby. It's terrible.
It's fine.
I hope. Okay. Well, you don't. I was almost going to want you to redo the reading, but
Wow. Was it when I was reading?
yeah.
Oh, then they probably won't even notice.
Well, they'll be looking more at you maybe, but
Yeah.
anyway.
All right. Let me know, Sean, if you think it's a problem. I wouldn't have noticed because I was looking away. Okay, ready?
Some people may read along when you read. I don't know. Rather than watch you read, they may read along with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you ready?
Oh, you're gonna redo it and see if.
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna read. Okay, we're gonna wait and see what Sean says because there's a delay.
What, Sean?
Da 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 da.
Sean noticed it. Does Sean know what's going on?
Yes, he heard that whole
Oh,
conversation.
okay.
We are live,
Okay.
but nobody else will. This is not gonna stay up.
But okay. Anyway.
Behind a bit, I had to listen to your comments on the Psalms. Okay. I don't know what happened. I guess he paused. Didn't even notice. Okay.
Onward and upward.
That's the right.
Arriba. Y adelante.
That's the right answer. All right, ready? Cool.
What's happening now?
We're reading more of the Bible.
Okay, but where are we?
26:15 through 30. It's a very short passage. Okay, ready?
Okay.
26:15, 30. You good? Yeah, I think a lot of people are just going to read along, and a lot of people are just going to listen. Anyway, you ready?
Right.
Okay. What is up with all this acacia wood? We're going to talk about that and other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan here with my father, Dr. Kaplan. We're reading through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy over the course of this year. Today we're reading Exodus 26:15 through 30, and I'll be reading from the Robert Alter translation. And you shall make boards for the tabernacle of acacia wood, upright, 10 cubits the length of the board, and a cubit and a half the width of the single board. 2 tendons for the one board linked to each other. Thus you shall do for all the boards of the tabernacle. And you shall make the boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the southern end. And 40 silver sockets you shall make beneath the 20 boards, 2 sockets beneath the one board for its 2 tendons, and 2 sockets beneath the other board for its 2 tendons. And the other side of the tabernacle at the northern end, 20 boards. And their 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets beneath the one board, and 2 sockets beneath the other board. And at the rear of the tabernacle to the west, you shall make 6 boards. And 2 boards you shall make for the quarters of the tabernacles at the rear, and they shall match below, and together they shall end at the top inside the one ring. Thus it shall be for 2 of them. At 2 corners they shall be. And there shall be 8 boards with their silver sockets, 16 sockets, 2 sockets beneath the one board, and 2 sockets beneath the next board. And you shall make cross bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 cross boards for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 crossbars for the side of the tabernacle at the rear to the west. And the center crossbar and the middle board shall shoot through from end to end. And the boards you shall overlay with gold, and the rings you shall make of gold, housings for the crossbars, and you shall overlay the crossbars with gold. And you shall set up the tabernacle according to the fashion of it you were shown on the mountain. All right. Lots more direction.
I'd like to say this.
Yes.
The slaves worked for a long time as slaves. And at the end, when they left with great wealth from the Egyptians.
That's right.
And now they're utilizing it. They have the resources to make this tabernacle according to what's been commanded here.
Right.
I'd like to also quote, because of its hardness, acacia wood is an excellent material for building furniture. I see there's, and I see here it's durable and so on. So it's a quality wood. It's quality wood.
Yeah, you're getting back to my original question.
Yes, I wanted to respond to Daniel's comment about acacia wood.
Yes. Something else that I think has been pointed out that I believe is true from what I've seen is that acacia trees do not bear any sort of fruit or anything like that. So it might be another reason why they would do it, because why would they be chopping down and using the bark of a tree that's also good for fruit or food? That would seem more wasteful, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's so that's something to keep in mind as well. I'm sure I would love actually to see, and if you are somebody who's into like horticulture or things like that, if you have other ideas at what symbolism we can get out of that, I would be very interested, because the Bible usually is quite intentional. Now, granted, it's also the supplies they had on hand. There's a reason why it's not asking them to make things out of bamboo or something like that, because they didn't have it. So sure, I'm sure that's part of it, but there were other options. So I would be interested, if you're into furniture making and stuff like that, I would love to hear more about it. So that's some high level reasons, perhaps. It's just something that comes up, because it's so specific, and you just hear it over and over again. So
this was a mobile structure. It was designed to be put together and then disassembled and reassembled, as they travel.
And that's interesting considering the quality involved, right?
Right.
Now, what I would wonder is whether or not acacia wood might be good for that. It might be a durable wood that is more portable or lighter in some way. That might be part of it as well. There might be something practical about it. So that'd be interesting to know.
But here again, the Bible is a book for everyone. and some people are going to be really into this kind of thing. The Bible has a lot of numerics, which I love, even though math was not my strong suit. And then literature, of course, and
Yep.
history, a lot of
Right.
history.
Right.
But
Poetry.
whatever your interest, and if you're interested in
Sex. It's all in
yeah,
there.
a lot of that actually, and if you're interested in architecture, you have
Right.
sections like this.
Yeah.
So there was a very there was an evangelist who was teacher of mine, and I knew him well, and also his son was a minister. I knew his son very well. He had several children, but one of them was a student with me. Another one was older and was a pastor of mine for a while. But he was really into this, and he did a dissertation.
And I love that he was really interested in that. That's great.
He did a dissertation on Ezekiel 40. Those chapters about the future temple. He did a very detailed thesis on the subject, which I think I have.
Right.
Even for me to go through it would be very difficult because I don't have that kind of, my mind isn't on that sort of thing. But but I just want to bring that out, that there's all kinds of various aspects of life in the Bible, and various people might gravitate to one area or another.
It does make it very I want to say like holistic, right? It's
Right,
like,
yeah, right.
God works in so many different ways, and you can also picture him so many different ways. You were talking in Hebrews where this is talking about the angelic realm, and so you have the architecture, and it does bring in the metaphor of God as like the architect of the universe and all of that. So yeah, there's a lot going on beneath the surface here beyond just us getting details about what it is that they were doing, which of course in of itself, even if you're not into architecture, well, as a historian, the fact that they went through such precision, we don't usually get this sort of precision, certainly from this era. I would be surprised if there's anything from this era nearly on this level that you could make as exact of a replica of. And if you're a historian, you please correct me on that if I'm wrong, but do you really think there's any other structure from whatever, this century that this happened, that we have this detailed of information that we could create a model at the accuracy of this? I don't think so.
Well,
I can't think of anything
those who
like
built
that.
it would have the plans and so forth.
No, but I mean, it's preserved. Do we have any preserved things like that? And maybe somebody will correct me and they'll be like, well, actually, it was a common custom to be this detailed, which would tell us something else. So if that's not true, I don't know. I'm just not aware of it. And to me, it would seem rather unusual. I mean, even nowadays, to describe something quite on this level is not all that typical.
No, but
there's a lot of buildings that are just a few hundred years old. We don't know very much about. We don't know on this level because nobody ever talked about it on this level.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It may just reflect your reading interests. I don't know.
What do you mean? When have you ever heard this level of detail about a structure? This level of detail. It's like a blueprint.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I mean, that's not that common. Like the Library of Alexandria. Do we know this much level of content? I don't think so.
I see.
I don't know. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Do we really know?
All right, no, that's a very good point.
Because look at how different it's pictured.
Yeah.
They picture it all different ways because they don't know that level of detail. And those were things that people went from, miles around to see, and they were wonders. And
7 wonders of the
world.
Right?
Right? So, like, I don't know. Like the statue of Colossus or whatever,
Yeah, Colossus of Rhodes, you mean?
Yeah, right. I don't know how much detail we know about it in terms of the exact measurements of it and things like that. And again, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Go ahead in the comments. I just think this is actually rather unusual. And I would think, at any rate, even if it's not that unusual, I would think historians would just really appreciate the fact that they were that meticulous. This is the kind of information that historians always want, right? You want that level of data because you're like, wow, I could actually know for 100%, what it looked like. That's great.
Right.
It's a wonderful thing.
Okay.
All right.
Let's move on.
Let us move on, and we will talk more about these details of the tabernacles. In the meantime, like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you tomorrow.
So decades from now, my grandson will see his grandfather drooling over a cell phone.
I mean, I would never have known if you hadn't have told me, but
Alright.
now that I do know, as soon as he sees this episode, I'm gonna be like, so your grandfather was really upset when he was drooling.
I don't know, I guess, yeah.
Or if you want, I can never mention it to him, out of respect for your wishes.
Well, you may not even notice it yourself.
I mean, I might remember this conversation because
Okay,
you
but
made
you would-
such a big
But you
deal
would know
about it.
when it happened during your reading. No, if you don't know.
That's true, but I'll be watching for it.
Well, I don't know if I'll see it or not. I don't watch all these episodes necessarily. I watch some of them, but
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Oh, Sean was wondering, did David use these plans or Solomon? That's a good point. When they doesn't God gives them plans, right, for
Yeah.
the temple, so they wouldn't have to have them. But I do wonder
it had to have influence.
it would
on
have influence. Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe we can speak to that. Okay, are you ready?
Right, we're on 31.
We're on 26, 31 through 37. It's a short
Oh,
section.
wow, okay.
Yeah, the next few ones are very short. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Wait, 26, what was it? What is it? 31 through 37.
31.
Okay, ready? Okay. What is up with this curtain in the middle of the Holy of Holies? We're going to talk to that and other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan. We are going through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy over the course of this year. Today we're reading Exodus 26, 31 through 37, and I'm going to be reading from the Robert Alter translation. If I have it up, here it is. And you shall make a curtain of indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen, designer's work. It shall be made with cherubim. And you shall set it on the 4 acacia posts overlaid with gold, their hooks gold upon 4 silver sockets. And you shall set the curtain under the clasps, and you shall bring there within the curtain the ark of the covenant. And the curtain shall divide for you between the holy and the holy of holies. And you shall set the cover over the ark of the covenant in the holy of holies. And you shall put the table outside the curtain, and the lampstand facing the table on the side of the tabernacle to the south, and the table you shall set on the northern side. And you shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent, indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen, embroider's work. And you shall make for the screen 5 acacia posts, and you shall overlay them with gold, their hooks gold, and you shall cast for them 5 bronze sockets. Okay, so.
I would like to mention that there's a word techelet, which is a certain shade of blue.
Is it the one he says indigo here?
He says indigo. A lot of the translations say blue.
Okay.
But the techelet is evidently the color that was used for the tassel, the fringe that you're going to read about. We're going to read about later.
Yep.
And
which is a whole conversation in of itself.
Which we call Tyrian purple, that supposedly came from this mollusk, and so on. I just wanted to mention that
it was a very difficult dye to obtain.
Yeah, techelet is a subject.
Now here's something. Well, since you're bringing it up, do we want to have the dye discussion right now, or do we want to wait till later?
Let's wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll just have to hold on that one because I got thoughts.
Because, as I said, some translations say blue. He says indigo, which may be better.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a better way to look
at it. All right. Yeah. So here we have a curtain, and again we have this combination of colors and fabric and the loom that are weaving together all these different things. I mean, this would have been very beautiful, I would think, if you think about. It reminds me of. They call it like variegated yarn, where it fades from one color to the next and things like that. And again, I've said this a bunch of times, but think, when you think of religious expression, it does not have to be some sort of kind of safe, bland sort of presentation. You can have this vibrant, this colorful, this combination, this diversity involved.
I wish there was an Israeli who did a beautiful big volume on the Tabernacle, beautifully illustrated. And I was trying to recall the name, but maybe next week or next time we get together, I'll have the name and title. But
Yeah.
There's a beautiful book on the subject a long time ago.
Hmm.
It was already available to me in the 1980s, as I recall.
Hmm.
Uh,
And then here we have cherubim again. So you do, as you were saying earlier, you talked about this depicting the heavenly realm, right? So
right.
all around, you have all these cherubim, and then in the center you have, the Ark of the Covenant. And to your point, because this is something that comes up a lot. To your point, in terms of iconography, right? You have essentially a affirmation of the second commandment, because you have all this iconography about the cherubim, but when you get to that center section, there's nothing, right? It's just a blank space. It's
Pardon,
the
would you repeat that?
it's an affirmation of the second commandment in a sense,
Oh,
because you have all this iconography, but
right,
in the place where you think of God's presence being, you have nothing.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's the vision of the invisible God kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's to me, it's just affirmation that we have to be very careful with the iconography we use in that way.
It may be this book, The Tabernacle by Moshe Levine. It may be that.
Okay.
At
It
least
says 30 full color plates and 40 black and white
it looks
photographs.
like
Yeah,
maybe that's what it is.
sounds like it.
Tabernacle by Moshe Levine. I just wanted to
Hmm,
mention that,
sounds cool.
right. Now, I get no commission. I just wanted, to mention that.
Yes. All right. So getting to the curtain itself, obviously a lot of symbolism to glean from this, it would seem like, right? Why is it necessary if you have a whole tent, right? There's a structure, essentially, right? Why do you need a division within the structure? And what does that mean when it says something is holy and then it's like something can be holier than holy? Like, isn't that a little bit peculiar? I'm gonna just toss that out as a question.
Well, that shows the reverence that we need to have, coming before God. Um, that there's in effect levels of sanctity,
Hmm.
and the Holy of Holies was reserved just for the Day of Atonement and just for the high priest.
Right,
And you may remember, I'm sure you do, that with the crucifixion we have the tearing of the curtain that separated it,
right.
and symbolic of what Christ's death has done for us.
Which
Uh,
is
you know,
what? If you think of this, right? Because you just said what this symbolizes is there's a level of kind of holiness, and then there's that next step that maybe you can only do under certain circumstances. You have to get yourself in the right frame of mind. The tearing down of the curtain, does that remove that as a principle?
it removes it for those who have a relationship to God through Jesus Christ.
Okay.
There's a difference.
So you're saying at the level, if you're a converted Christian, the idea that you need to kind of put yourself in a sanctified state in order to get closer to God for a special purpose is not exactly correct. You should not frame it that way. You should frame it as a constant. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to get to the nuance because you're saying the principle of the holy and then the holy of holies is there's levels, right? But if the curtain is broken, wouldn't that mean for somebody who's converted there are no longer levels? It's always constant,
I would say,
right?
and that's the tremendous spiritual uh, achievement, of Jesus Christ's ministry.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not mean, see, prayer is a complex thing, and I don't know if anybody really fully understands it.
And fasting, right? Because those are
But
both prayer and fasting are usually the ways people try to get closer to God. I don't want to say
right,
try. The way the Bible instructs us to get
but
closer
I
to
do
God.
believe that I believe from the Bible that God does hear prayers of people who are not Christian.
Okay.
Uh, but there is a
Even though
something.
there's the verse that says the prayer of the unrighteous is abhorrent to him, it still doesn't mean he's not going to listen.
Well,
Sorry, I'm just throwing stuff
none
out at
of
you.
us are perfectly righteous,
Okay,
and
you're right. Okay, I think that's a good
He's
defense.
near to all who call upon Him, Be'emet, in truth.
Hmm.
If you really sincerely want a
Right,
relationship with God,
right.
it's not just a matter of like a rabbit's foot. If,
Hmm.
if you don't mind that kind of analogy,
No, no, that's a good
like
analogy.
if you really want to have a relationship with God,
Hmm.
as much as you can understand,
Right,
as much as He gives you to understand, as Lincoln said,
right.
to do the right as God gives us to see the right. Paraphrase his
Hmm.
second inaugural. It does say in the Psalm 145 that He's near to those who seek him in truth. It doesn't mean that he's
What
going.
about those who say only people that are called can seek him in the first place? Only people that God has a relationship with in
Well,
the
that
first place.
seems to contradict that verse. Why would that verse even be there then? All who call upon him in truth. It's just, I don't. What are they saying?
Some
It's like
people,
circular reasoning. It seems to me.
well, what they would say is that we're so depraved we cannot seek out God unless He has called us in the first place.
Well, that seems to be stretching that verse. If from me, it says he's near to all call upon him in truth, and so now
But they would say only the people that He called can call upon Him. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. My point.
If they can bring verses to
Yeah.
they should bring verses to support that contention.
They do.
Otherwise, all right, they're putting their spin on the verse, but
And you, so are you. You're coming to it from a framework.
well, I'm just reading it objectively. That's what it says.
Yes, but they think they are too. But
Well,
their objective reasoning comes from a different epistemological framework.
I'd like to see their verses.
Yeah.
And then we can discuss it.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. Now, no, my point though is I'm getting to, this is something that I see, and maybe it's more of a kind of a charismatic sort of thing, although I see it all around, and it's this idea, it's like, they kind of want to take this example and they want to put it in now. And they say, you can approach the Holy of Holies, but, you need to put yourself in the right frame of mind and you need to, really fast and you pray. And if you get yourself there, if you really work hard and you're really diligent, then you're going to have this personal encounter with God, and
salvation by works.
Well, it's not really by works exactly because they don't accept that either, and most of these people don't even think you should keep the Sabbath. So that's not you know what I mean. It is though kind of
Paul talks about that self-worship.
Do you think it's self-worship even though they're trying to get themselves in a contrite state for the sake of being closer to God?
Well, it depends on whether they do it in a balanced way,
okay,
or if they get kind of fanatical about it,
well,
where they're abusing their body.
Well, I'm not talking about abusing the body. I'm just questioning whether or not the whole point. Because
no, fasting is a positive thing in the
But
Bible.
my question is what you were saying, because I'm just following what you were saying. You were saying is that there used to be these levels, right? So there was kind of like, there's the people outside that are like, they're still righteous, and then there's the priests that are within the holy place, and then there was a one priest that got to go to the holiest of holy place. And the question is has that hierarchy completely been destroyed? And if the answer is yes, then I don't think you can even claim that there's some sort of, to get a personal encounter with God, that you have to kind of do these different things. You have a personal encounter with God by default by being converted. Is that correct?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
No, because of what Paul says about the benefit of fasting and
but do you benefit? No, I guess my point is the benefit of fasting and so you can have a personal encounter with God, or is the benefit of fasting so you can grow in the faith and knowledge of the Lord and Savior, which are not the same thing.
No, that's true. The access is through Christ, not through whatever you do.
Right.
No, I would say that.
Right, and people do the same thing for like healing and all kinds of stuff, right? They put a lot of the onus on you. In terms of the reason why God isn't working in your life right now is because you're holding him back, because you're not committed enough. And I think there are consequences to being disobedient, of course. But I don't think that you can, what they're doing, in my opinion, is applying this model. And I think this model doesn't exist anymore.
That's right. I would agree.
Okay. Because that's what you said at first. And I just wanted to go a little bit further.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Now, if you want to be, want to get nasty, it says who all who call upon him in truth.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to take that bet, you could say, well, your word is truth. So maybe if they're calling upon him in an unbiblical way, then he's not close to them.
Right.
But then what would be an unbiblical way?
Right, because nobody's 100% biblical, right?
Yeah,
so if it's you have to be 100% right, well then nobody gets that.
Right, there you go. Right.
And that's where I don't like salvation gatekeeping and things like that, because since we're not, people want to just have this very hard line, and there's a difference between speaking to principles and speaking to what the Bible says. Ultimately, what the Bible says is in order to get in, you have to be perfect for sure, right? But we know we're not. So therefore, there's some wiggle room there. It's not as clear cut as people make it out.
But
Because as soon as you do that, you make a bar, and as soon as you make a bar, you get into problems.
no, I don't fully understand but there is a difference in the relationship that we have with God if we accept Jesus Christ as our personal Savior, our Lord and Master,
But
our
in
High
truth,
Priest and
right?
coming King.
Because you
Yeah,
can maybe believe in a
right,
Jesus Christ that is
right.
not in fact Jesus Christ,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's a separate matter. But I'm saying if it's done, appropriately
To
according
some extent, biblically,
yeah,
right?
right, then there's a difference in the relationship,
hmm
and it's going to lead to resurrection when he returns to immortal life.
hmm
Uh, you
Now,
know,
here's something else,
there's a difference
right?
there, but it is a very complex matter.
It is a complex matter,
Yeah,
and here's another thing I think about the difference that people don't necessarily think through. I mean, that might be a little bit harsh, but
as
sometimes people
Paul
look
says, let us come boldly before the throne of grace.
right.
And so he's saying that
We're
we
kind
have
of acting as
we
a
have
high,
a relationship that others don't have,
right, or
and
did yeah, and they
or
didn't have.
and right,
In a
okay,
sense.
yeah.
They had an advocate go for them. Now
So,
here's the thing though that I will want to say, right?
but I want to be careful with it because, as I said, it's more complex than I fully
Well, I
grasp.
might help you with the nuance
Oh
here.
wow, okay.
Even in this system, right? Let's say that curtain. No, we're not going to say it. The Bible says that curtain has been, gotten rid of, and we're saying that means therefore there's a certain consistency, right? Even back then, was the high priest really in a certain status that was spiritually better than everybody else? It was
No,
a function, right?
function. It was
So
a
we need to
function.
be careful about that too. What I do see people do, and they do it a lot, is they will claim that because we have this spiritual status, that therefore we are better than people in the past.
That's horrible.
It is horrible because the high priest was not better than King David because he had that access. That's not what the Bible claims. So we've got to be
Not
very
many
careful.
wise men now are called.
Well, no, it's not a matter of
Not
wise
many
men. It's
noble.
that we have the Holy Spirit. Average Israelite did not.
Okay,
Doesn't that make us better?
potentially.
Right, potentially. And when you get specifically to the writers of the Bible, I would say I would not make that assumption because they're writers of the Bible. There's no reason to claim that the writers of the Bible had less access to truthful reality than me, right?
Or more? What do you mean?
There's no reason to assume that the biblical authors had less access to truthful reality than me, even though the Holy Spirit relationship is maybe different. What do you think?
Well, I don't doubt that it could be that the writers of the Bible were converted people.
But you said might be, right? Shouldn't our assumption be that they were?
That they were, yeah,
Right. So our
yeah,
assumption should be that they were.
that they were,
They
yeah.
were righteous people that were, and all of this curtain falling and all of that, that doesn't affect the
No,
fact of all that.
let's just
I'm just trying to get the difference
no, let's
because
just
there's a
look at
lot of people that, because of how dramatic that is, they want to create a very different level of a Joe Blow Christian versus Joe Blow, Israelite. And I don't think that's
the
reasonable.
New Testament tells us that there are Old Testament people who will be in the first resurrection. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob.
But they might say they were held to a different standard because they didn't have the Holy Spirit.
They were held to a different standard. They're going to be over us. David is going to rule over Israel and over the 12 apostles because each apostle is over a tribe, but David's over the whole nation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The people come up with things. That's kind of creative because
Well, because we can look back at their mistakes, we can look back at some of their backwards views. Some of them were socially or were culturally affected. They were making mistakes that culturally we think of as
and
abhorrent.
we don't.
I guess that's what they think.
All right. Well,
I mean, you don't think that they're going to look at us and be like, look at all these cultural horrible things that you allow? Of course they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But again, you have the point of and there's a certain amount of leveling of the human race that needs to be done. But the Bible is not about that. It's not about everybody's garbage, right? It's that we can think better of
We're
certain.
warned about comparing ourselves among ourselves
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. Let's.
Well, but here, let's see if you want to say that. Do I have the right then to say, well, I'm going to respect a psalm writer a lot more than I'm going to necessarily respect average Christian musical artists nowadays, because I know that person is in the Bible and canonicized. And even if the modern person has an access to the Holy Spirit and the gospel, that person didn't. That doesn't actually matter.
No, you're respecting what was written. I don't know Heman and Jeduthun. What are you trying to say? I mean,
Know that the words matter more.
Of course they do. They're in the Bible. They're canonical.
Some people would say otherwise. I've heard it.
Well, what can I tell you? I mean, I tremble before God's word.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
I'm
going to be biased, but my point is yes, I'm going to be biased towards the words of the Bible,
yeah,
and I'm not going to assume. I'm going to assume the best of the writers of the Bible.
Of course.
I'm going to assume they're better people than me because they're in the Bible and I'm not. I don't see any reason why to think otherwise.
Of course, yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. All right. But I mean, I guess I'm getting at that because of this whole leveling, right? Because it used to feel like a hierarchy, right? And if the idea is we're all on the level of the high priest and all of this, fair enough. But I mean, the high priest wasn't anything, like that either.
No, it was just his role.
It was just his, yeah, right. It was a job, right? And
right.
Sure enough, there may have been Joe Blow Israelite that actually was more biblically oriented, and they just weren't in the right tribe, right?
Right.
So yeah, okay. All right, that was kind of a quirky discussion. It was a short section though, and I appreciated getting that out because I think it should spark some discussion. If we sparked some discussion, spurred some discussion with this, because we went on a lot of different tangents, please comment below because we can always do more videos explaining some of the things we talked about. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you tomorrow.
We on 27?
We are on 27. Yeah, 1 through 8.
That's almost it, I think.
Yeah, there's one more after that.
No, it goes through 10. I thought it goes through 10.
It goes through 19.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
You're pretty close. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. What can we glean from the altar of God here? We're going to talk about that. My name is Daniel Kaplan, and here I have Dr. Mark Kaplan, my father, and together we are reading the books of the Bible, Genesis through Deuteronomy over the course of this year. Today it's going to be Exodus 27, 1 through 8, and I will be reading from the Robert Alter translation, and then we'll discuss what we've read. And you shall make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits in length and 5 cubits in width, and the altar shall be square, and 3 cubits its height. You shall make its horns on its 4 corners from the same place, same piece, its horn shall be, and you shall overlay it with bronze. And you shall make its pails for its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its flesh hooks, and its fire pans. All its vessels you shall make of bronze. And you shall make for it a meshwork grating of bronze, and you shall make on the mesh 4 bronze rings at its four corners. And you shall set it beneath the ledge of the altar from below, and the mesh shall come up halfway up from the altar. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. And its poles shall be brought through the rings, and the poles shall be on the two sides of the altar when it is carried. Hollow boarded you shall make it, as he showed you on the mountain. Thus they shall do. Okay, so we have instructions about this altar that is going to be used. What do you think are some of the things that we can glean from these specifics about the altar? Does anything come to mind?
Well, originally, he told him, if you're going to make something of stone in Exodus 20, don't make it of hewn stone. He was wanting to guard them against, I guess, idolatry there. But now he gives them specific instructions about an altar of bronze, so now that they're ready for the tabernacle, he in the beginning, I guess they might have improvised and he warned them about what not to do, but now he does give them a specific altar and describes it so that they have exactly what he wants done, and it's in bronze. So there's that much. I wanted to go back to Exodus 20 where he talks about stone there, but I think at that point, they were not yet ready. They had not yet begun building the tabernacle, so they would have improvised perhaps at that point. And so he said, during this time, I don't want you to make something out of the stone, because I think he was trying to protect them from idolatry. But here now he has direct instructions about what kind of altar he wants, and it's a bronze altar here.
Mm-hmm. Now, Robert Alter has pointed out that in comparison to a lot of literature, ancient literature, the Bible doesn't tend to give us a lot of detailed information about kind of the mundane pieces of life, like tools and things like that. And this is unusual in how detailed it is when it says, pails and shovels and fire pans and all of that. And you can see what it's connected to. This is a typical thing that authors will do, right? They will give you more information about things to indicate the importance of the thing itself.
Right.
Because and of course it's helpful on multiple levels, right? But one thing it does tell us is that, this isn't just a thing. This is kind of the thing, right? This is the centermost thing, about what is going on. And it can be very helpful. Now, let me contrast that, and this is kind of an interesting contrast. Later on, when we get to the Gospels and we have the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, you do not get a lot of detail about what is going on. In fact, it's a debate about how many nails they used. So I do think that's interesting. There is a difference, and I think I think that's interesting. We also, like I said, do not get much detailed information about the specific appearance of Jesus Christ either, and I think that's also interesting. What you make of that, you can think of, because obviously I'm not trying to say that the Bible is saying any of those things are less important. I just think that is interesting.
Jesus was the Son of Man. He was representative of all human beings.
Right.
So we wouldn't want to necessarily know too much about him, because then you might feel, oh, he has the same color here as I have, or he's my height or whatever, or my weight. That so.
And I think in terms of the crucifixion itself, I think the same thing. We already have people trying to duplicate it and do crazy things in order to try to get close. So that's not the intention. The thing itself, the way he was punished, is actually not really the point. We need to know how it was, for the historical information and stuff.
The horror of it.
The horror of it, right.
Crucifixion was a very inhumane way to kill
But
people.
I can tell you, a modern artist, or even artists in general, would generally go into more graphic detail and specificity about the horror, and it's deliberately avoided. It's deliberately avoided, and it's something to keep in mind. The reason I bring this up is because I think there are a lot of manifestations of that, and I don't necessarily know if that's always the most appropriate way to go about things. I don't know if iconography about it or lengthy movies about it is necessarily fitting in with the biblical view, because I do see a contrast. I see a contrast in deliberate writer intention of how much detail we're given about that, when if you look at this is the original sacrificial system. In my opinion, we're given a lot more detail. Now, you might disagree with that, fair enough, but this is just something I'm observing.
a couple of things. There was one place to do this. It's not something that's supposed to be done in your local area. There's a
Now,
central
can I hold off
sanctuary.
on that for a second?
Okay.
Okay. In Exodus, they did do it in their homes, right? So it has changed. Because when they
Well,
killed the
just
lamb,
that one. Yeah, that one to sacrifice the Paschal lamb was
right.
done at home.
And the issue is that some people, because there are some people who do this, and different groups that do this because they're, very law abiding and they're zealous and they want to keep the law. They actually do things like kill a Passover lamb and things like that. And they believe that they have a right to do so because when there wasn't a temple, they did it where they were. And it says, you do it in a place that I so choose or whatever. And considering the New Testament says, where two and three gather in their name, I'm with them. Therefore, their local abode can be used for that.
But you're not supposed. But we're not supposed to sacrifice. We don't have to do that sacrifice anymore. He's our sacrifice. Jesus Christ is the antitype.
But let's say you're not even doing it because you think you have to. Let's say you're doing it symbolically.
Well,
because it is going to happen. You mentioned a couple of episodes ago that it's going to come back. It's coming back in Ezekiel. So what's the purpose of it if we don't have to do it?
You're making a very big mistake if you do it.
Yeah, but that argument doesn't follow.
If you read the Bible,
like if it's being done in Ezekiel, then technically it could be done right now.
No, they're constantly being criticized for their for local sacrifices. Kings are criticized for not getting rid of those local sacrifices. All through the Bible, it says he was good, but he let them continue with these high places. There should only be one central sanctuary, period.
Right. So. But I guess my point is, imagine the temple was rebuilt right now, and they did the annual Passover sacrifice. You wouldn't find it offensive that they're continuing to do it, even though Jesus is the Lamb, right? You wouldn't. It's not. They should. It's not like a requirement, but you wouldn't find it offensive that they do it. It's not like
it's there. If it's
right. That's what I'm saying. At the temple with the whole system.
When Saul tried to offer sacrifice, that was terrible, because he was supposed to wait for Samuel.
Right.
So how people who are not priests, how dare they? They're not.
What about the fact that are all of us priests in the New Testament?
No,
couldn't you get
this is the new covenant, not the Sinaitic covenant. The Sinaitic covenant, there was a specific role for the priests and Levites under that system.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have the same system. So you can't take that analogy like that far, because then you're.
So you would say you can't literally say you're a priest. It's a metaphor.
You're a priest in a certain respect. Certain things that are not fully under the old covenant, because you're not a king, are you? Well, you're a royal priesthood. What does that mean? What power do I have over somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be careful how you handle that.
Yeah, but I mean, but the issue is not whether or not somebody might sacrifice a lamb now, because system's going to come back. It's more of the fact that they should not be doing it in an inappropriate way, correct?
They shouldn't do it at all.
But then why does it come up in Ezekiel? I'm confused.
It comes up in Ezekiel by the priests at a specific place, specific people at a specific place. Or why are they doing it at all?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, because we had a comment. Jesus is the Lamb. Wouldn't it be offensive because the new covenant tells us Jesus is the sacrifice of sin? Doesn't it kind of negate the sacrifice?
No,
Isn't it kind of anti-Christianity to say that any sacrifice should happen?
No, because it's being done as a pedagogical tool. That is, in other words, people all around the world can maybe look at their cell phone or whatever technology we have and see it going on. And
it's so weird, the idea of a live stream of a Passover sacrifice, but it probably would happen. You're right.
And so they would then realize the importance of the sacrifice of Christ. It's a pedagogical tool.
But your point is that you would not be able to do a pedagogical tool on your own terms. That would be wrong.
No, on God's terms, not on your terms.
Okay.
And
so people thought of it as a pedagogical, because some people might think of it that way. They might frame, I'm going to do it in my backyard as a pedagogical tool for my family. And no, do not do that.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
A man was killed just for touching the ark.
I know.
You gotta be very careful.
Well, I agree. That's my point about a lot of this. Worship is something we should come through very carefully, very thoughtfully. It's the best of the best. It's meticulous. There are systems. and that is not a bad thing.
Now
It
you're
does
getting
not ruin your Christian freedom.
now you're getting me into areas, like for some people, there was a young lady, well, maybe not so young, but there was a lady that made a very brilliant comment some years back, in the city of Altadena, in California. We were at somebody's home
Hmm.
that had a Bible study there and so on, and she said when she went to a I'm going to be stepping on toes here.
That's fine.
She went to a Messianic congregation, and it reminded her of in high school they had this Elizabethan day where people dressed up as Elizabethan characters, or you have these Renaissance fairs, and that's what it reminded her of, like a
Hmm.
dress up day. And I think to some people this becomes almost like a toy. For example, the shofar becomes a kind of a toy. The shofar in among the Jews is blown on the Festival of Trumpets. And it could be that in Jerusalem they would blow the shofar before the Sabbath, but not generally all around the world. It's not used by Jews all around the world, other
Because
than
it does mention no trumpets, doesn't it?
on the
Before the Sabbath, doesn't it? To call people to the
no,
tabernacle
it
and stuff.
mentioned no, on the new moon trumpets were blown, but again they were blown, in the official location, not just all around the world. What I'm saying is, it seems to me that for some people the shofar has almost become like a toy. I know that's
I
okay.
don't know if toy is the right word. Isn't it more like, because that's actually in some ways not critical enough. Because I don't think they think of it that lightly. I think they think of it as somehow they're connecting to something on a cultural level, and there's an advantage to that, or it is maybe there's a spiritual component to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard from people that actually they believe in listening to shofars because they think it helps, ward off demonic forces and things like that. Because
Oh,
you can,
wow.
I mean, but you can fall into this sort of
That
thing.
reminds me of a very wonderful lady. Uh,
And I don't think that person is badly intended, and
no,
if they listen to it, and again, it's like, what did you say, pedagogical?
I
I'm going
would
to use
steer
that.
them away from that though.
Yeah,
But okay, I
yeah.
have here a cruise of olive oil that I would use to anoint someone.
Yeah.
But I knew a lady who took the cruise and began running it around her neck like it was some kind of a talisman. It's just a container for the oil, and even the oil is just symbolic. The oil doesn't do anything for you, actually. It's symbolic,
Hmm.
but you have to be very careful with that sort of thing. And I mean, I'm not down on shofarot, but I'm just saying for
What's your purpose, right?
no,
What's your motivation?
I'm saying
Yeah.
that for the Jews,
And it does come across as strange to
yeah,
somebody from a Jewish background to see it used so
yeah,
casually,
right, yeah,
because
right,
that's
right,
not how it's
that's
used.
right.
And so it's kind of strange to use something from that culture, because there's no command in the Bible except for, on that
We
festival
right,
to blow it. So what exactly
we
are you
we
doing?
blew it on Rosh Hashanah, and then at the end of Yom Kippur, there was a final blast of the shofar, and then it was next year in Jerusalem, and
Hmm.
that was the end of Day of Atonement. But other than that, and ironically too, another funny thing, which I don't agree with, but in the Jewish religion, you don't even blow it on Shabbat. When the Festival of Trumpets comes out on the Sabbath, you don't even blow the shofar.
Right.
You blow it the next
Because you
day.
can't hold an
You
instrument.
have 2 days of trumpets, and you blow it the next day.
Right.
But I think in Jerusalem they do blow it right before the Sabbath,
Yeah.
but that's Jerusalem.
And I would also say that the Bible doesn't even command you to blow it on the Festival of Trumpets. It just tells
It's
you blowing, because
Rom Torah,
and the
yeah.
reason why I think it's just blowing or shouting is because not everybody's going to have access to an instrument like that or the talent. And
Yeah, right.
and why would God paint you into a corner that the only way to celebrate a festival is if you have access to that?
Yeah, the shofar is to some degree tradition, right? You don't
And
want,
I'm
I
not
don't,
saying it's wrong.
no,
It's
but
part of the history. It
right,
is there. But
yeah,
I don't think if somebody blows another trumpet, or if you do something loud and boisterous in order to celebrate the festival that doesn't involve an instrument at all, except for your human instrument, that you're doing anything wrong. Maybe
that's a good
even if you're
point.
mute, you can stamp your feet. Like, there's a lot of options, and I think that's because God doesn't want to make you sin because of arbitrary
Right,
reasons.
yeah, that's a good point.
And so we have to be careful when we
It's
use
a
these
good
sort of
point.
cultural practices
Right,
that we think that's the right that's the right way to do it, that's the only way to do it, and
right,
that God is so rigid in
right.
his format.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You know, it doesn't make sense.
There was a very wonderful comedian, a satirist from the 60s, and but he just recently died. And he used to say, his name was Mort Saul,
Hmm.
and when he finished his monologue, he would say, "Is there anybody else left that I haven't offended?" So I'll make that comment now.
Yeah, well, you
No,
know.
peace, peace, brothers.
Yeah.
I had this.
If you disagree with any of us, if you
Yeah,
want to defend anything that
right.
we have talked about and you think that we are missing the mark, we are not correctly, we certainly do not want to straw man around here. You'll notice, in my conversations with my father, I try to what they call steel man. I try to find the best possible defense for something he's going to disagree with,
But
even stuff I don't agree
I'll
with.
go even further now. And okay, the talit.
Oh no.
I mean,
Are we going to get into that now?
people make a like a special, I don't know, a special. I'm trying to think of the right word, like a charm or something out of a talit.
Oh, yeah, they get the mystical about it.
Yeah, mystical about a talit,
Right.
and I mean, it's nice that people are philo-Semitic now, because when I was growing up, I got a lot of verbal abuse, and when now I watch TV and these preachers are telling me how wonderful Jews are. Well, that's nice, but to use it, to take the talit and make a. I mean, there are some ministers, you give them a donation and they send you a talit or something like that, as if Anyway, I'll back away, but we want to be careful about
Yeah.
this kind of thing.
Anything,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right,
And I think that's one reason why people can go to the other extreme too, and they think all ritual is bad, and all
right,
iconography is bad, and any
right,
culture is bad, and all
right,
traditions are bad.
right,
And that's not true either. You do have to
right,
find the balance.
right.
There's nothing wrong with deciding the best way that my family can celebrate X festival is this practice, and it becomes a big thing, and you can even hope that your grandchildren do it because you think it's really edifying, and then they can see pictures of you doing it. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're being biblically appropriate. The issue is when you might either judge others for not doing it that way, or you feel like you're kind of restoring some sort of right way to do it. That's where it really can go off the
Okay.
rails. So
Now we've really stirred up a horn.
Speaking of which, though, if you do want to get good ideas, you can always check out the video on this channel about festival practices. And I also have a video on this channel about church services and how to make that the best of the best. So, don't just have to go based on here. If you want an idea of more of, that kind of thinking, check it out. And subscribe, hit the bell, ring, call up your friends because it's a great year to read the Bible together. We will see you. Yes?
Why is it a great year? Because it's a Shemitah year. It's a sabbatical
It's
year.
a sabbatical
And
year.
go to Deuteronomy 31 and you'll see what my son says is backed by scripture.
Yes, but we also give the Jews the authority to tell us it's a sabbatical year. Just keep that in mind as you're trying to be philo-Semitic.
You should check out that video I sent you of the Chabad guy if you haven't yet.
Sabbatical year. Amen.
Chabad, but
I'm not sure who that is.
you should check out that Chabad video I sent you.
I'm curious who that is.
It's really cute. Rachel saw it.
All right.
You haven't seen it yet, evidently, but I sent it to you.
Okay.
You hear what I'm saying? Okay.
Oh, I heard.
Thank you.
Goodbye. God bless. I wonder who that was.
Goodbye. That's Andrew, maybe?
No, there was somebody on there.
Okay, he said God bless, so that's encouraging.
Yeah.
What about Christina?
Because it says LPTV, but Rebecca wouldn't say goodbye, God bless.
No. Christina abandoned you,
Who's
huh?
LPTV? Oh, shush. Everybody abandons me.
And here I hoped that she would come down for the feast if we kept it here.
I'll have to...
I thought she'd come down from Tallahassee.
It's not the Lincoln Project. Hey, if the Lincoln Project is watching me, that's fantastic. Now, who is this person?
Laughing Place. LP is Laughing Place.
Yeah, well, but that doesn't sound like Rebecca. We'll have to ask her if she was watching.
Mike Lindell says goodbye, God bless.
Maybe.
The pillow guy.
Yeah.
Maybe the pillow guy was watching. What is it, LP?
Yeah. She also said good day, God bless. That's just not Rebecca
No.
Way.
LP has to do with pillow. I know. Little little
I
pillow.
don't know
That's
who it is.
LP is the initials of the person.
Yeah,
Do you know
but I
anybody
don't know
with
anybody named L.
LP? You don't know anybody named LP?
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Well, maybe
I'll have
it's
to look it up. Okay, are
a
you ready?
new person.
Might be.
Okay,
Are you ready?
ready.
Okay. What was I going to talk about? It's only 10 verses, so
This is the end.
this is the end.
Where are we? Where did we leave off?
Verse 9. Okay, you ready?
Did we talk about the menorah yet?
That was a long time ago. So if you want to go back to it, you can. We're going to be talking about the court.
Oh, the menorah. Yeah, I would like to say something about the menorah.
We can talk about the menorah. We're going to talk about the court next.
Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, ready?
I thought the menorah was in the 27th chapter.
You are not correct. It's the 26th chapter. Actually, no, it's the 20. Yeah, the 26th chapter. Wrong, sir. Wrong. Here,
Wait. Where is it in the 26th chapter?
Unless it's different. Is it different in the different translations?
I don't think so. Just squeeze.
No, maybe it's the 20. That's the 27th chapter. That's not the 26th chapter.
Now I'm in the 27th chapter.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what you're looking at. You need to look at the 26th chapter.
I was.
Okay, hold on. No, it's before this. It must be the 25th chapter.
It's not in the 25th chapter.
Well, we talked about it. Hold on.
It's in the 27th chapter, I'm telling you.
There it is.
Oh,
Lampstand. Wait, hold on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you did read about it. I remember you read about it.
Yeah, but...
All right, okay.
I read about it.
Yeah, okay.
27.
It'll come up in the 28th again, I think.
Yeah, we're not going to get that far.
Right, all right. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the lampstand. Okay.
Yeah, we go to 27:19. You ready?
Okay, right.
Okay. Okay, ready? Set up.
Ready.
Let's talk about the court around the tabernacle. We're going to talk about that and other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan, and together we're going through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy over the course of this year. Today we're going to be reading Exodus 27:9 through Exodus 19. And you shall make the tabernacle court on the southern side. There shall be hangings for the court of twisted linen, 100 cubits in length for each side, or for one side. And its posts shall be 20, and their sockets 20 of bronze. The hooks for the posts and their bands shall be of silver. And thus for the northern side in length the hangings shall be 100 cubits, and its posts 20, and their sockets 20 of bronze, and the hooks for the posts of silver. And the width of the court on the western side, 50 cubits of hangings. Their posts shall be 10, and their sockets 10. And the width of the court on the side to the very east, 50 cubits. And 15 cubits of hangings for the flank, their posts 3, and their sockets 3. And for the other flank, 15 cubits of hangings, their posts 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gate of the court, a screen of 20 cubits, indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen, embroider's work, their posts 4, and their sockets 4. And all the posts around the court shall be banded in silver, their hooks silver, and their sockets bronze. The length of the court 100 cubits, and the width 50 throughout, and the height 5 cubits, twisted linen, and their sockets bronze. So for all the vessels of the tabernacle and all its service, and all its pegs, and all the pegs of the court shall be bronze. So here we have the concept of a court around the tabernacle. So it's not just the Holy of Holies. It's not just the structure. There's even a structure around the structure, right? So it's multiple, there's a level even to that, right? And why do you suppose there's, this many levels of
So
of things.
so the reading ended before we got to the lampstand at the end here.
That is correct.
So that begins next week's reading.
I guess so.
Okay.
I mean, it's 20 and 21 does appear to be next week.
Okay.
So it's how they broke it up, unless there's a difference in the
no
Hebrew versus
no,
the
that was,
English. I will double check to make sure that's not the case.
no, but that's okay.
That there is not, and I should be reading that. Hold on, just a minute. Because yeah, it is kind of a strange place to end it, if you ask me. Although I guess I should not say that.
No, they had their reasons.
Yeah, it's the same. So yeah,
Well, we have the tabernacle
that I can see.
We have the tabernacle. In other words, we want to define the space that is for the sanctuary. So we have an outer building. Then within that, we have the divisions. We have the holy place and the holy of holies.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to end with the whole court,
Right. Right. And there's a courtyard as you
right.
as you approach.
So why do you suppose there's that? I mean, that is 3 levels. That's kind of nice, right? Because you have the courtyard, the holy, and the holy of holies. So that's nice.
Right.
But why do you suppose there's this concept, right? Why isn't everything done in the structure? Is that just? I guess that's a somewhat of a practical thing, right? But
right.
And then, but what's interesting is the stuff done outside the structure. There's still a bit of separation around that. One thing I can think of is what was done in the courtyard. What was what was the purpose for it?
I think isn't that where the altar was?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was asking kind of a rhetorical question.
So more people will be coming in and
right.
bringing in their
One
animals.
reason I think why there may be that separation is because why did people have to go to the altar? They had to go to the altar for sin offering, so it does give a certain amount of privacy, which is nice. Just to a certain extent, right? Or am I wrong? Am I misunderstanding?
How are we dividing up the building? What's in the second part? You have the Holy of Holies. What's in the second? What's in part
the
before?
spot on the other side of the curtain?
Yeah.
And then you have the court.
Right. Well, isn't that altar in that court area?
Right.
So what's the privacy part of it?
Because it's curtained around. It's fenced. Right? That's the whole point of the court, isn't it?
Well, you walk into the building and there's an open area there.
No. Around the gate of the court is screen of indigo and linen and all.
Oh, okay, I see.
The whole thing is fenced. It's like a privacy fence, isn't it?
I see. All right.
That's how I've always seen it pictured, and I thought that's what this is getting at.
Well, yeah, there's privacy once you bring the sacrifice.
Yeah, so nobody gets to see you do that because that's a private matter, right? You could have had it where the altar would be just out on display and everybody gets to give their sacrifice and they see you do it. But here, they might see you go into the courtyard, but they don't see you do that.
Okay, I hadn't thought of it that way. I thought that many people could be there waiting with their animals to.
But those are also those are also people that are in the same situation as you.
Correct.
Which is not that's like a support group or something. That's not quite the same. I think there's
a
certain
misunderstanding.
Yeah. My point is I think the idea that there's a certain amount of privacy in terms of the handling of sin is something we could get out of the fact that there's a court.
I would agree.
I think the public the airing the public grievances of sin is something that we do need to confess to one another, but I think sometimes we might oversell the public grievances of sin if you kind of look at how this is being handled.
Yeah, okay, I agree.
It's just something to think about. Certainly in terms of what you demand of others, right? In terms of the way that they, the penance they show in public and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I think there's a lot demanded of people now. And I don't know if that, always, but I don't know if that's always necessary.
Well, it depends. If you're a public official and you violate, your office, then yes,
of course
there's accountability.
Well, but that's something where the offense is to multiple people, right? Depending on what it is.
No, but right. So right. I wanted to mention that the lampstand came up.
But let's go.
Before we get to the lampstand.
Yeah, before we get to the lampstand, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go back. But look at King David, right? At some point, he would have had to go and give some sort of sacrifice. But again, it would have been in a courtyard. It would have been fenced off. It wouldn't have been like, all right, everybody, I'm sorry. Here's a big thing I'm gonna do in front of everybody. It's not, and I'm not saying I don't know what he did. He might have put out some sort of apology that got spread around or something. I don't know.
No, I doubt that. But now it's in the Bible for everybody to see.
Well, sure, but my
no,
point
but
is
it wasn't then.
my point,
Yeah.
right? My point
Right.
is cultural practice, because this is what
Yeah.
this is talking
It was
about, right?
after his death.
And I would say
Right,
this tabernacle system does not support the cultural practice that we kind of put people in the stocks. It's that when people are doing things in order to, there's people getting pushed out of the camp and stuff like that. We'll get to that, and there's punishments. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just grasping. But I think there's something to that. I think there's something to the fact that there was this extra area. It didn't have to be there. They could have just had the altar outside, but they have this extra separation. And I think there's something to that we shouldn't just disregard. And maybe I'm not giving the best analysis of it, but it's something to think about. That's all I'm saying.
And regarding the lampstand, I just want to make one comment on it. That
I'm sorry.
No, we will discuss it. At greater length, because it comes up again.
Yeah.
Next, the next
comes
meeting.
Up a lot.
So there's a lot to say about it, but I'll hold that.
Well, why? We could talk about it. Do you want to talk about it next week? Oh, because we're going to talk about it next week.
Because we're going to read about it again.
I see.
And we'll also read about it later on in the law too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it'll come up, here and there. So, but I want you to know that there's a lot more to say about the lampstands.
All right. I'm going to go even further with, I don't know what you want to say, what that was just a minute ago in Midrash or whatever, where I'm kind of extrapolating a principle from it. Here's another principle. Inside the structure.
I'm not sure I fully understood your point. Because let's say that
that's good.
Let's say that you have a celebrity.
Yes.
Who's always talking about, let's say, the environmental problems, and then we find out that person is really living a lavish lifestyle and doing everything he's telling other people not to do. Well, then he ought to publicly apologize, in my opinion.
Yes, but I'm not getting at that.
Okay, I'm not sure what you are getting at.
Sacrificial system wasn't an apology. The sacrificial system was your personal penance for something. So I don't think that celebrity would have to post pictures every day of them doing some sort of difficult thing on themselves in order to prove to anybody else that they learned the point. The point is that they should say, I'm sorry, and then we say, okay, and that's it. We don't have to see their process of repentance. The process of repentance can be private.
All right. Okay, I understand that.
So in my opinion, like, let's say a pastor stole money from a bank or something, right? Obviously, he would have to go in front of his congregation and he could say, this is horrible. I've sinned. Maybe there's some sort of, church system that has to be dealt with. But in terms of his personal responsibility, he doesn't have to go on Facebook filming himself praying to God, showing how sorry he is.
No, of course not.
And I'm not even sure if that would be appropriate considering this. I mean, it's certainly not culturally similar to this.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
There's a very big difference between apologizing to you and you showing your relationship to God in some sort of virtue signaling way.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
All right. Okay.
It's kind of like when Jesus was like, the people, they go to pray at the synagogues, they blow their trumpet and stuff like that. We're trying to get away from that. We're trying to get away from, look at my relationship with God and how great it is,
Right.
And so I think that's that separation. Now,
okay, very good.
Does that make sense now?
Makes sense now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm certainly not trying to say that people don't have to apologize. You have to. I mean,
you have the floor. Continue.
You're supposed to rebuke somebody and see if they repent, right? Yeah, no, that's true.
Let us hear more of this matter, like the Athenians.
No, but the more of the matter is, okay, so we have this fence around the outside. What does this fence not have? It does not have cherubim. The other two did. This one does not. What does that also tell us? What do you get from that? Because there's a difference.
Oh, I thought you were going to give your.
I mean, I could, but I want to hear your. Your take before I do.
I hadn't focused on that particular matter.
No. But what might come to mind? What might you think? I want to see if we're on the same page. You have the curtain between the holy and the holy of holies with cherubim. You have the curtains all within the tabernacle itself with cherubim. Then you have the courtyard, no cherubim.
Well, it may be that you need to sacrifice before you go any further.
I like that. Yeah. The other thing I was thinking is how do you broadcast yourself to the outside world? Do you necessarily have to be so religiously iconography oriented to just the average person? Imagine somebody visits their encampment, which happens, right? People come, what's
Jethro,
Balaam comes, he says
Yeah.
your tents are beautiful and stuff.
Right.
What he would have seen of the tabernacle is not a representation of the religiosity. It would have been just bland, would have just been generic.
That's a good point.
Now, I think that's important because your best foot forward is not always to throw in a lot of things that people are not really capable of understanding or might misconstrue.
That's a very good point.
So we need to be careful.
I've
about
always
that.
that's been something I've focused on over the years.
And let's look at a modern example, okay? Should your church building from the outside necessarily display the same sort of things it does inside? I would say no. Does that mean your church shouldn't be obviously a church with religious content? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is there might be religious content that if you give to the outside, you paint a mural and they see on the outside, they may get the wrong impression because they simply do not have the spiritual understanding that you do. And I don't mean to be insulting, but you know what I mean? Like, I've seen stuff where it could be some sort of iconography. I mean, you were talking about the halo thing, right? You put that on the outside of your building, and you might be like, wow, those people are idiots. They think people used to walk around with a big golden glow around their head all the time. Isn't that ridiculous? And why are you doing that to yourself? Let them come to maturity, let them come into the fold, let them come into the community, and then you can be more intimate. Art is intimate. It's sharing your personality. We don't necessarily have to be like quite that explicit to just any Joe Blow. We should be careful with that. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's a good point.
That's what I'm getting at.
I was going to say something earlier. A person who is now well, he grew up Greek Orthodox and now he's returned to it.
Mm-hmm.
But a brilliant scholar, a Cypriot, Greek Orthodox person, Greek Cypriot. He, of course, he also lived in the UK. Now he lives in the United States. But he told me that the reason for the iconography in the early years was because the population was largely illiterate. So this was a way of illustrating the Bible to them. So that's somewhat of a defense for it. But I would say perhaps the church should have been more aggressive in getting people, teaching people to read.
Oh, you mean the modern church, like the Catholic Church or things like that?
No, I'm talking about the medieval church.
Yeah.
When the iconography became popular, now it's a standard tradition. But I'm saying when the church made the decision to go that route,
right?
He said they made the decision to go that route because the average person at that point was illiterate. So this was a way of illustrating the.
Yeah, but that doesn't really logically follow because my point is your external presentation, right? Because let's imagine you are a church and you have a very strict, second commandment sort of policy, and then you put something on the outside of your church that
No, I'm going back to an earlier point.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just the whole concept of iconography. Not what you're saying.
I think you can't be down on iconography because the Bible uses it. So the idea that you only do it for illiteracy is silly. Not to mention the Bible does iconography through language. It's constantly using visual metaphor.
Right,
so how can you get rid of iconography? That makes no sense.
Well, maybe he was trying to defend it in a culture which.
I mean, even Jesus talks about not one jot or tittle. Like he uses that's iconography in a sense to make a point. Like all of it. I don't know. That's a little strange. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a mechanical purpose to that because I think that is a reason for iconography. But I don't think it's just because we are not literate. Because people use iconography all the time, even though a lot of people are literate. Why do companies have logo? It's shorthand. It's helpful. It's branding. It demonstrates a point, Well, think of it this way. Nowadays in conversation, what do people do more and more? They do animated GIF or GIF, if you are bothered by that pronunciation. But they do that, and it represents a lot in just a visual image. Right. You'll show somebody who looks really shocked, but in a certain kind of way, and you get so much more across. It's actually a very convenient way of having conversations that I would love to see a linguistic person extrapolate from because it's fascinating. Okay. It's really fascinating, but it makes a lot of sense. Right.
Okay.
But when God uses visual metaphors, there's multiple layers. People look at those metaphors and they draw so many different things from it because visual is not the same as just a word. I mean, words have different meanings too, but you know what I mean. There's a value to that. But my point, what I was getting at was, if a church has iconography on the
Yeah, I
outside,
agree with
and
that.
it's like, what do they do? Worship idols in there or something? And that's not what they're doing. Then you can really give the wrong impression.
Yeah, I agree.
Or who knows what? Their view of God is that.
Right, yeah.
And so I think you've got to be careful with how much you show. And if you look at this example, the example is nothing. And I'm not saying that means you can't have anything, but the example is nothing. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. There's nothing untruthful about having nothing. It is just the thing. You know what I mean? So,
Well, I don't think you even have to have some sign out indicating this is a church. You could just have a nice building,
no,
and
of
people
course,
could
right,
drive by and say, "What's that building?" It's a
right,
church. Okay,
right.
fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to necessarily have a big,
Mm-mm.
have like a
And if
neon
you're a
sign.
Christian, sometimes I don't have to, I'm not mocking Christians that walk around with statements of truth or things like that. But when you're just speaking to the general world and they're going to reduce your thought to that, you've got to think about such things, right? And maybe that isn't really the appropriate place necessarily to be sharing that kind of information. Or what kind of iconography you have, not even like a verse or something. Imagine it's some sort of visual illustration of something. What might they get out of that from a religious context that could be wrong? You kind of have to take the opposite view. How you're viewing it is one thing. What's the worst possible interpretation? Because that might be what a lot of people are thinking. And it is interesting, like I said, in the commandment that they are not. And I don't think there's any iconography on the outside of the temple either. It's a pretty building. But
Right,
there's
right,
nothing
right,
like that.
right,
There's nothing to indicate it's a religious building per se. Like, there's nothing,
right,
you know,
right,
and I think
right.
that's important. I think that's important to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't want to criticize people who are
No,
have some kind of thing written
I'm
on a
not either. I'm
T-shirt
just
or whatever.
no, no, no. And honestly, I find that very encouraging at times. And I think
I don't do it, but I don't
no,
want
no,
to
no. I
criticize
find
those
that
who do.
encouraging sometimes, and I have worn stuff that has religious content before. I'm not saying you can never do it. I'm just saying there's an intentionality to it that we need to be careful about. And especially, as a whole group, as
Right.
a whole culture, that's even different than the individual level, right? That
Right.
is, you put all your resources towards this project. How much does your project need to wear spiritual components on its sleeve? I think it's something you should ask. It's not being deceptive. There's nothing deceptive about the fact that the outside of the tabernacle was not blatantly anything.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
my point.
Right. Yeah.
Let's be careful, because I know people get judgmental. They'll get
Yeah.
judgmental of charities that are religiously based, but they're like, well, how come they're not called Christian whatever, or how come they don't do this, and
Yeah.
that might not be fair criticism. That might not be fair criticism.
Well, I often point out, Book of Esther does not mention God's name
Right.
explicitly. Song of Solomon
And
does
it
not.
also shows the value of not always wearing it on your sleeve, right?
Right. Song of
Because
Solomon
the
does
fact
not.
that she was essentially like this, she was the outside of the tabernacle, is what saved everybody at the end.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Because it wasn't until there was a point in which there was a level of intimacy with another person that she gave them the information.
Right.
So timing matters.
For such a
So,
time as this. Yeah.
right. All right. So timing is hard in conversation. All right. So anyway, anything else before we go further? Hopefully, over the course of this week, we've made a case as to why all these details about the tabernacle might have mattered more than you might have thought before. So that was my goal. So I hope I did it. Because I honestly like this section of the Bible a lot more, just having to focus on it. So, anything else?
No. We'll talk more about the lampstand and other
You're really excited about that
and other
lampstand.
matters as we
The lampstand will return.
and the showbread. We'll talk more about the showbread.
Yes.
Uh,
Will show us the bread.
right. We'll talk about that more.
Showbreads and shofars and chauffeurs. It's all going to come your way.
Okay.
All right. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It's a great year to read the law. Oh, for some reason it's not working. Okay, that's all right.